Chapter 1269. Xiao Hua is only in the second layer of the Qi refining realm. There's still a long way to go before he reaches the peak of the Qi refining realm. How can he sense divine thoughts? Xiao Xinrui couldn't understand. That's right. We're in the 11th layer of the Qi refining realm, but we don't even have a trace of divine thoughts. How can Xiao Hua do it? Zhang Qingxiao looked at Xiao Hua through the mirror with a very strange expression. This is what Xiao Hua told me himself. I don't know why either. Moreover, I also tested it with him. It's just as he said. Xiao Yuehong smiled bitterly. Our junior brother is becoming more and more mysterious. Gong Mingwei looked at Xiao Hua, who was cultivating with his eyes closed, and said thoughtfully, "That's right. First, he practiced my Shang Huaming's cultivation method without any sluggishness. Then, for 3 years, he didn't make any progress. After taking 12 Peiyuan pill, which is enough to advance to the late stage of the Qi refining realm, he actually just advanced to the second layer of the Qi refining realm. Of course, the most incredible thing is that he was extremely lucky to find both the absorption fruit and the black tusk grass. Based on this, in the future, all the spiritual herbs that I use, Xiao Hua may even be able to find some 300-year-old linglong grass." Gong Mingwei sighed and said, "Moreover, the Peiyuan pill, which is extremely useful for cultivation, may also be related to him. More than that, he has never entered the pill room, but he actually knows the art of alchemy." Zhang Qingxiao laughed and said, "Although he doesn't admit it, the slight movement of his left and right hand's fingers is exactly like casting a spell. Right? Father, you've really picked up a strange person." Yes." Xiao Yuehong thought for a moment and said, "He can use flying talismans faster than you late-stage Qi refining cultivators. Moreover, according to what he said, his strength is enormous. He can break a defensive talisman cast by a 5th or 6th layer Qi refining cultivator with his bare hands." Zhang Qingxiao and the other two sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at each other again. Their eyes were full of horror. "Father, Xiao Hua, he can't be from the devil world." After a long while, Xiao Xinrui asked in a weak voice, "It seems that only the devil realm has this kind of magical power in the cultivation world." Xiao Yuehong shook his head slightly. "Over the past few days, I've been thinking carefully. 3 years ago, although the war between immortals and devils had just ended, although Master also picked up Xiao Hua on the way back from the Imperial Devil Valley. After all, that place was already far from the Imperial Devil Valley. On the contrary, it was very close to my Yellow Flower Ridge. Moreover, Master has also examined Xiao Hua's Dantian and meridians. They are the same as our human race, and they don't seem to have cultivated. That's right, Master. During the 2 days you picked up Xiao Hua, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in our Yellow Flower Ridge. From the looks of it, it was as if someone was going through a tribulation in the legends. This Xiao Hua, could it be that he failed to pass the tribulation?" Zhang Qingxiao used his extremely flexible brain. "I don't think so." Xiao Yuehong still shook his head. "Although I didn't catch up to the lightning and thunder at Yellow Flower Ridge, the thunderstorm happened in my Yellow Flower Ridge, and Xiao Hua wasn't here at that time. Moreover, if he failed to pass the tribulation, his soul would have been scattered and he would have fallen into the cycle of reincarnation. How could he be intact? But Xiao Hua has lost his memory after all. If there is no major change, how could it be like this?" Gong Mingwei asked. "I don't know. Looking at Xiao Hua's appearance, he is obviously an ordinary person who has never cultivated before. What major change can he have?" Xiao Yuehong shook his head. "But how can we explain Xiao Hua's series of strange things?" "Master," Zhang Qingxiao disagreed. "The world is so big, there are many strange people. Xiao Hua might be a god who descended from the heavens and was born with a strange talent." Xiao Yuehong's face lit up. "And maybe he is my Shang Huaming Underworld senior, using a great magical power to give my Shang Huaming Underworld the hope of revival." Zhang Qingxiao looked at Gong Mingwei. Both of them were somewhat aghast. "Forget it. Who cares? Xiao Hua is honest." if he is really the key to refining this pill. Father, you have really picked up a treasure for our Shang Huaming underworld. Xiao Xinrui laughed. Maybe our Shang Huaming underworld can use this to become the fourth big sect in the country of Xi. It's still early, still early. Xiao Yuehong waved his hand. The most important thing now is to look at the specific reasons. Xiao Hua didn't know that there was a mirror technique in the cave next to him, nor did he know that Xiao Yuehong and the others were discussing him. He had already reviewed the art of alchemy when he first guarded the furnace, and the last time he listened to Xiao Yuehong's guidance, he understood a lot. The only thing he lacked was hands-on practice, so this time he didn't make any hand seals and only closed his eyes to cultivate. Therefore, every night when Xiao Hua was cultivating, the strange starlight would still arrive as scheduled, wrapping the pill furnace in front of him within the starlight, and traces of the starlight were also absorbed by the Wu Tsang pill. On the seventh day, Xiao Yuehong, Gong Mingwei, and the others appeared in the pill room on time. "Can you collect the pills, Master?" Seeing Xiao Yuehong and the others come in, Xiao Hua stood up and cupped his hands in greeting. Xiao Hua, you have worked hard. Stand aside." Xiao Yuehong nodded with a smile. The Parasol Underworld pill was a much lower grade healing pill than the Peiyuan pill. It was also the pill that Xiao Yuehong was most familiar with, so when he collected the pills, he didn't need any yellow talismans. After a few hand seals, Xiao Yuehong's divine sense swept over, and a trace of surprise immediately appeared on his face. Xiao Xinrui obviously saw it and couldn't help but ask, "Father, how is it?" "I don't know yet, but this time, it's the same as the first time. 1 furnace, 24 Parasol Underworld pills." Gong Mingwei and the others were pleasantly surprised, because except for the first time, the next 2 furnaces all contained 18 pills. There's hope. Not only Xiao Yuehong, but Zhongqing Xiao and the others also had the same thought. With apprehension and suppressed surprise, Xiao Yuehong put the 24 Parasol Underworld pills into a jade bottle. Then, without waiting for the fire under the pill furnace to be extinguished, he threw a Parasol Underworld pill into his mouth. The pill dissolved into liquid and melted into his body, and Xiao Yuehong couldn't help but show a trace of excitement on his face. Then, that excitement turned into astonishment, and that astonishment became more and more intense until it finally turned into ecstasy. Xiao Xinrui and the others didn't understand and looked at Xiao Yuehong eagerly. "This is simply the best Parasol Underworld pill." Xiao Yuehong finally opened his eyes and said, "Father, how is this possible? The best Parasol Underworld pill you refined before was the middle grade. This Parasol Underworld pill is actually better than the upper grade?" Xiao Xinrui couldn't help but blurt out, I, Shang Huaming, have never seen a best Parasol Underworld pill. It's definitely the best," Xiao Yuehong said resolutely and decisively. "My ancestor once refined the upper grade Parasol Underworld pill. When Master was trading with people outside the demon-resisting valley, he used it because of a fight. There's something strange in this Parasol Underworld pill. Perhaps you encountered it when you absorbed the Peiyuan pill. This thing increased the efficacy of the Parasol Underworld pill by more than 10 times. It's far from what the upper-grade Parasol Underworld pill can compare to. If this pill isn't the best Parasol Underworld pill, what other Parasol Underworld pill can be called the best?" Then Xiao Yuehong turned his head, stared at Xiao Hua, and asked, "Xiao Hua, what did you do?" Xiao Hua was shocked and said, "Sect Master, I didn't do anything. Although you weren't around this time, I really didn't do anything other than cultivate." Of course, Xiao Yuehong knew that he didn't do anything. But the problem was that he didn't do anything. Why did the pills in the pill furnace change with him around? And without him around, the pills were still ordinary pills? Gong Mingwei and the others didn't ask. After all, they stared at the mirror for 7 days. Xiao Hua really didn't do anything. They just looked at him curiously, looking at this extremely ordinary-looking young man. Eldest senior brother, second senior brother, senior sister. I really didn't do anything. Xiao Hua was creeped out by their stares and couldn't help but defend himself. I know you didn't do anything. Zhang Qingxiao smiled and said, I just want to see what my Shang Huaming's future god of fortune looks like. God of fortune? Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He only thought of exchanging spiritual herbs for spirit stones and the like for Shang Huaming's revitalization plan. He never thought of the use and value of the top-grade parasol underworld pill. Zhang Qing Xiao and the others often went to the trading market, so they naturally knew what this top-grade pill meant. That was a top-grade pill that even the 100 Herbs Gate and 10,000 Flowers Valley couldn't take out. That was a top-grade pill that had a price, but no market. Xiao Yuehong's face was also suffused with a layer of red light. He put the 23 top-grade parasol underworld pills into his storage bag and turned to ask Xiao Hua, "Are you tired?" "Tired?" "Sect Master. The pill refining is done by Sect Master. Disciple is just guarding the pill furnace. There's nothing wrong with the pill furnace. Disciple is just guarding the pill furnace and cultivating. How can I be tired?" "And that's good. Master will refine another cauldron of parasol underworld pills. What do you think?" "As Sect Master says, Disciple will cultivate anywhere," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "Good. While you're refining pills, Master will teach you some of our sect's pill refining techniques." Xiao Yuehong tempted. "Yes, Disciple understands." Xiao Hua's face was filled with gratitude. Immediately after, Gong Mingwei and the others returned to the other cave and watched through the mirror technique. Xiao Yuehong arranged the herbs and began to teach Shang Huaming's pill refining techniques to Xiao Hua. Of course, when it was time for Xiao Yuehong to leave, Xiao Yuehong didn't say anything and immediately left. Like this, another 7 days passed. As expected, another 24 top-grade parasol underworld pills were refined. Xiao Yuehong and the other 3 no longer had any doubts. These top-grade parasol underworld pills must be related to Xiao Hua. They also knew that such a strange thing would only happen when Xiao Hua was guarding the pill furnace alone. As for why, they couldn't say, and neither could Xiao Hua. Knowing this was enough, because 3 days later, Xiao Yuehong began to throw the last batch of absorption fruits and black tusks into the pill furnace and began refining the last batch of Peiyuan pill. Chapter 1270. Just as Xiao Yuehong was about to toss the last of the Peiyuan pill-absorbing fruit and black tusk grass into the cauldron, Xiao Xinrui's expression changed. Her gaze fell on the storage pouch at her waist. Xiao Yuehong stopped and turned around. "Xiao Rui, what's the matter?" When Xiao Xinrui heard her father's question, she patted her storage bag, and a yellow talisman appeared in her hand, emitting a pleasant sound and flashing a 5-colored brilliance. "Father, this is the invitation talisman that Jiang and from 100 Herbs Gate asked Xiao Hua to send over. She invites me to visit Yao Nong Peak after 100 days of meditation." Xiao Xinrui looked down at the invitation talisman that Jiang had sent over. She felt a little uneasy. In the past 10 days, she had been investigating the secret of the Peiyuan pill and had forgotten about this matter. 100 days? Xiao Yuehong was taken aback. He grinned and snorted coldly. "The 100 Herbs Gates calculations are quite accurate. I almost forgot about it. I wonder if they can refine a top-grade pill no matter how accurate their calculations are." "Of course they can't. Is there even a need to ask?" Zhang Qingxiao said. "All right, I hereby announce that your reflection in the tranquil cave ends today." Xiao Yuehong was in a good mood. He waved his hand and said, "Your cultivation will return to normal." "Yes, we understand." Gong Mingwei and the rest bowed. "TSK, nothing has changed in the first place." Xiao Hua secretly rejoiced in his heart. Although he didn't know where Gong Mingwei and the others were in the last few days, he understood that with the curiosity of these people, how could they obediently cultivate in the tranquil heart cave? "But, father, this Jiang, I feel that we should give her an answer." Xiao Xinrui's eyes flashed, and her tone was a little strange. How could Xiao Yuehong not know what his daughter was thinking? He looked at the cauldron above the earth fire and waved his sleeve. "All right, we will not refine pills today." As he spoke, he walked out of the alchemy room. Hearing that her father didn't want to refine pills, Xiao Xinrui's heart skipped a beat. She thought that her father was angry, but listening to his tone, there was no special anger. Xiao Xinrui had a look at Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao, who were also a little unhappy, with an embarrassed expression on her face. When Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao saw their junior sister's lovely face and pitiful expression, their hearts softened for no reason. The two of them looked at each other and sighed in their hearts. Then they followed their master out. Xiao Xinrui followed closely behind the two of them. Only Xiao Hua shrugged his shoulders with a relaxed expression. He also walked out of the alchemy room, where he had stayed for dozens of days. When they arrived outside cherishing Birch Peak, a patch of brilliant sunlight sprinkled down on the foothills. It was quite warm, and the countless flowers, trees, and grass seemed to be thriving. Xiao Yuehong squinted his eyes and raised his head, looking at the clear blue sky. His expression was somewhat strange. When everyone had walked behind him, he used his finger to point at the thick black clouds above his head, as well as the faintly discernible lightning within the clouds. He said, "This astronomical phenomenon is rather strange. It's clearly a clear sky, yet there are thunderclouds. If there are thunderclouds, then there's no rain. It's already been several days." "Oh yes, master. Disciples saw it 7 days ago by chance. Why is it still like this today?" Zhang Qingxiao was also puzzled. "Master, this kind of weather seems to have happened 3 years ago. It was after Master went to the Imperial Demon Valley and brought Xiao Hua back." Gong Mingwei woke up and said, "I don't know how long this clear day and dark clouds lasted." Then lightning flashed and thunder roared. Disciple was scared to death. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was also chaotic. I couldn't draw spiritual energy into my body. Could it be that something happened again? Xiao Yuehong looked at the sky again and whispered, "Little Rui, do you want to go to the Medicine Farmer Peak?" "Father." Xiao Xinrui called, but didn't say whether she wanted to go or not. "If we talk about scenery, my Yellow Flower Ridge is definitely not inferior to the Medicine Farmer Peak. It's just that you have lived here for more than 20 years and have turned a blind eye to it. But even if you have turned a blind eye to it, there are many winding paths that lead to secluded places. As long as you put in the effort, you can find the valuable places. You see, even Xiao Hua can find rare spiritual herbs in places that you can't see. Little Rui, why don't you covet the beautiful scenery?" Xiao Yuehong looked at the flowing water outside the mountain and said softly. Xiao Xinrui knew that her father's words had a hidden meaning. Her face was slightly red. She thought for a moment and said, "Father, I know that the scenery of my Yellow Flower Ridge is unique, but I also want to go out and have a look. Maybe the scenery of the Medicine Farmer Peak is more unique? Is there a more beautiful scenery suitable for me to see? If I stay in this Yellow Flower Ridge, I will never know what the scenery outside the mountain is like." Gong Mingwei's face changed slightly, and Zhang Qingxiao clenched her teeth. Alas, senior sister is determined to go to the Medicine Farmer Peak this time. This Jiang Fan, how can he compare with eldest senior brother and second senior brother? Xiao Hua sighed. "Well, little Rui, you're not young, but speaking of which, for us cultivators, you're not old. You still have a lot of time. You don't have to be like this." "Alas, I've said what I should say. Little Rui, this road of cultivation is still your own path. I can't walk it for you." Xiao Yuehong nodded slightly. "Yes, I understand." Xiao Xinrui looked at her father with a trace of determination in her eyes. "Well, Mingwei, Qingxiao, you two send your junior sister to the Medicine Farmer Peak." Xiao Yuehong said with some excitement on his face. "Within 100 days, 3 of my disciples have stepped into the 11th level of the Qi refining realm from the 10th level of the Qi refining realm. This is an extremely rare thing in the country of Xi. Even if the 100 Herbs Gate have a lot of elixirs, they may not be able to do it." When Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao heard this, their faces were also filled with pride. In their hearts, they both made up their minds to practice harder when they came back. They would let the 100 Herbs Gate see which one was the real hero. Thinking of this, the two of them coincidentally looked at Xiao Hua, who was standing quietly beside them. Xiao Hua seemed to understand their meaning and nodded slightly. "Yes, master, we obey." Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao answered Xiao Yuehong in a loud voice. Xiao Yuehong was obviously stunned and a little surprised. He warned, "Little Rue, the 100 Herbs Gate will certainly be surprised by your sudden advancement in cultivation. They will certainly ask, you know how to answer?" "Haha, father, don't worry, I naturally know." Xiao Xianrui's laughter was like a silver bell. "Good, you go and wait." Xiao Yuehong waved his sleeve and took out his flying boat from his storage bag. He said, "Use this. Go and come back early." "Thank you, master." Gong Mingwei cupped his hands in thanks and took a small jade pendant from Xiao Yuehong. Using his spiritual power, the jade pendant emitted a hazy brilliance, and the flying boat suddenly grew in size. Gong Mingwei jumped into the flying boat first, followed by Zhang Qingxiao and Xiao Xianrui. Xiao Yuehong transmitted a few more words to Gong Mingwei. After Gong Mingwei nodded repeatedly, Xiao Yuehong said, "You guys go first. I'll send a message to the 100 Herbs Gate and have them come out to welcome you." "Father, I will go and stay for a few days. I will be back soon." Xiao Xianrui smiled. "Yes, father will wait for the message from the 100 Herbs Gate." Xiao Yuehong waved his hand. Gong Mingwei drove the flying boat and soared into the sky. He went out of Shang Huoming's protective array and headed in the direction of the 100 Herbs Gate. As the flying boat flew away, Xiao Yuehong floated in the air and followed it out of the formation. Only when he saw that the flying boat was out of sight did he withdraw his divine sense. He was puzzled as he thought to himself, "What's going on with this 10,000 Poisons sect? If they covet Shang Huoming, why do they only attack once and not do anything else? If they don't have any ulterior motives, why do they send 2 Foundation Establishment Stage Elders at once? The strangest thing is that they just want to scare the children and then return to the 10,000 Poison sect? I really don't understand what they mean." Xiao Yuehong didn't understand the meaning of the 10,000 Poison sect, but he wouldn't be an idiot to send a message talisman to ask. He just wanted to make the best use of his time to refine the best quality elixirs and start on Shang Huoming's development plan. It was best if the 10,000 Poisons sect didn't find fault with him now. After Shang Huoming's strength increased greatly, there would naturally be a day when the truth came alight. After returning to the Grand Formation, Xiao Yuehong did the same as before. He inspected the Grand Formation before returning to Cherishing Flower Peak. Since the myriad Poison sect attacked Shang Huoming, Xiao Yuehong would personally inspect the Grand Formation every other day. Moreover, he would leave a strand of his divine sense on the Grand Formation so as to prevent the myriad Poison sect from attacking again. On Shihua Peak, Xiao Hua was still waiting. When he saw Xiao Yuehong land, he smiled and said, "Senior sister and the others left." And they left. Your eldest senior brother and the others used the flying boat. They should be back in 2 days. Xiao Yuehong nodded. Then, "Sect Master, are we going to continue refining elixirs?" Xiao Hua asked. "Oh, no need. In 2 days, wait for your eldest senior brother and the others to come back." Xiao Yuehong raised his head and looked at the dark clouds that seemed to be inlaid with flaws. He smiled and said, "You've worked hard these past few days. Rest for a while first." "Yes, Sect Master. In fact, this disciple isn't tired at all," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "It's all Sect Master's work." This disciple just sat on the side and watched. And Xiao Yuehong pondered for a moment, seemingly hesitant, but in the end he still asked, "Xiao Hua, you really don't know the reason for the top-grade elixirs?" Xiao Hua frowned and shook his head helplessly. Reporting to Sect Master, although this disciple doesn't remember the past, this disciple definitely regards Shang Huoming as his home. If this disciple knows the reason for the elixirs, this disciple will definitely report it to Sect Master. "AI, that's not necessary." Xiao Yuehong waved his hand. "Everyone has their own secrets and their own ideas. Others can't force them." Xiao Hua's heart jumped and he thought, "Not good, could it be? Sect Master is already suspecting me? But what could the sect leader suspect? There's no evidence at all." Unexpectedly, Xiao Yuehong changed the topic. "Just like little Rue, Master never thought that she was so young and so early to have the idea of dual cultivation. Chapter 1271. Xiao Hua relaxed and said with a smile, "Disciple also doesn't understand. What's so good about that Jiang fan? He's not even fit to carry the shoes of our Shang Huoming's eldest disciple. Why did senior sister take a fancy to him?" Puffed. Xiao Yuehong almost laughed out loud. He waved his hand and said, "Although this is true, you absolutely can't say it in front of little Rue. Disciple knows." Xiao Hua said with a smile. "Disciple will only say it in his heart." Xiao Hua, you're a wonderful person. You usually look honest, but you're calculating in your heart. Sometimes you follow the rules and do things by the book, but sometimes you're quick-witted and capricious. You know how to adapt to changes. Compared to Ming Wei's inflexibility but lack of quick-wittedness, compared to Qing Zhao's quick-wittedness but lack of seriousness, you're much stronger. Master really wants to accept you into the sect." Xiao Hua blushed with shame and said in a low voice, "Disciple is stupid. I haven't broken through to the third layer of qi refining. I've made things difficult for sect master." Xiao Yuehong shook his head slightly. Master also thought so 100 days ago, but now, even if you give Master 100 guts, Master doesn't dare to accept you into the sect. Sect Master, what do you mean? Xiao Hua was shocked. Did Disciple do something wrong? You don't accept disciples? Don't worry. Seeing Xiao Hua turn pale with fright, Xiao Yuehong also felt uncomfortable and comforted him. Master is also very conflicted. Xiao Hua, especially these days, it's not that Master doesn't want to accept you into the sect, but I, Shang Huoming, am really too young. I'm afraid I'll affect your cultivation. Sect Master, do you know Disciple's origin? Xiao Hua asked anxiously with joy on his face. Master, how would I know? Xiao Yuehong smiled bitterly, then waved his hand and said, "Follow me." Yes. Xiao Hua nodded and followed Xiao Yuehong to the front of the secret chamber on Minci Peak. You came to Shang Huoming's inheritance palace last time, right? How do you feel? Xiao Yuehong asked Xiao Hua as he opened the restriction. Disciple listened to eldest senior brother briefly, but Disciple didn't understand and didn't worship the statue. Xiao Hua said honestly, not to mention your eldest senior brother, even I am a little confused about the origin of Shang Huoming. Xiao Yuehong brought Xiao Hua into the inheritance palace. This time, Xiao Hua didn't dare to look at the spell again. He lowered his head and followed in front of Xiao Yuehong. Watch the gods. Xiao Yuehong first bowed respectfully, then looked at Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "Have we met before?" Xiao Hua shook his head blankly. This disciple has never seen such a god. The legacy palace, huh? If you want to talk about it, it should be a place to pay respects to the past sect masters of my Shang Huoming sect, or perhaps a place to commemorate the founding ancestor. But the memorial tablets of the past sect masters of my Shang Huoming sect are all over there. Xiao Yuehong pointed to a remote location in the distance. Xiao Hua turned his head to take a look. It was very far from here, and there wasn't anything grand about it. There was only a jade table, and he couldn't even see it clearly. As for the memorial tablets, there are only 30 of them. Master is the 36th sect master. Your grandmaster traveled far away in his early years and hasn't returned yet. However, the life tablet he left behind has already been shattered. Presumably, he has already fallen in a foreign land, so this 30th memorial tablet was personally placed by Master. Xiao Yuehong pointed to the distance. He looked at Xiao Hua with some confusion and said, "The life tablet is a kind of jade tablet refined by the disciples of Shang Huoming sect who have reached the 12th stage of the qi refining realm and above. They draw out a strand of their divine sense and combine it with a secret technique of my Shang Huoming sect to refine it. This jade tablet is placed in the inheritance palace. Only when the disciple falls will it shatter, and the sect master of Shang Huoming sect will know about the disciple's situation. This kind of life tablet can be found in every sect of the Xiaoyu continent." This disciple understands. Presumably, it won't be long before eldest senior brother and the others can also draw out their divine sense and make life tablets. Xiao Hua said with a smile. Yes, being able to make a life tablet in itself, is a kind of affirmation of a cultivator's cultivation level. It is also a kind of honor. Xiao Yuehong sighed with emotion. Oh, I've said too much. Our Shang Huoming sect should have a total of 35 memorial tablets, but when Master took over, 5 of them were missing. Master asked your Grandmaster, but he also didn't know. Later, when Master had nothing to do, he looked through the ancient records and shockingly discovered that there were no records of the first 5 Grandmasters at all. Therefore, although I know the name of this statue is Hua, I don't know the Grandmaster's name. Whether this statue is the founder of the sect or a deity that my Shang Huoming sect worships is also not clear. This disciple feels that this should be a deity. Xiao Hua probed. The cultivation world is filled with all kinds of strange things. It's not something that people of our cultivation level can understand. Xiao Yuehong shook his head slightly. Although Master thinks the same as you, but I keep feeling that it's a bit strange. I keep feeling that this Hua is the founder of my Shang Huoming sect. And don't ask me. As for what's strange, Master also doesn't know. And our sect's ancient records are also strange. There aren't many records about cultivation techniques. Instead, there are many strange stories. There are many things that other sects have never recorded. Sometimes, Master even suspects that our Shang Huoming sect cultivation techniques were casually obtained and blindly made for us to cultivate. They are far from being passed down by our Grandmaster. In fact, Xiao Hua was somewhat disapproving. This deity was clearly not a human. Even if its upper body was humanoid, it didn't mean that it could speak, cultivate, or establish a sect. Xiao Yuehong's idea was most likely a bit far-fetched. He wanted to make Shang Huoming's birth noble. Although Xiao Hua's face didn't reveal his inner thoughts, Xiao Yuehong seemed to have sensed it. He smiled and said, Xiao Hua, don't think that Master's words are a bit empty. It's a bit like I'm sticking gold on myself. Disciple doesn't dare. Disciple just feels that sect Master's thinking is a bit unimaginable. Xiao Hua said in a panic. Master has said so much because I want you to know that it is precisely because I, Shang Huoming, have a somewhat unique background that I know some rare things. And these things, even the sect masters of the 3 great sects in the state of she may not know. Xiao Yuehong said solemnly. And these things will let you know that what Master is about to say is not unfounded and not groundless. What I'm about to say, Xiao Hua was obviously stunned. He looked at Xiao Yuehong, not knowing what shocking things he would say next. Actually, my Shang Huoming sect's cultivation technique is water-based. It's suitable for people with water-based physiques to cultivate. Your eldest senior brother, second senior brother, and senior sister all have water-based physiques. So, cultivating my Shang Huoming sect's cultivation technique will complement each other and make rapid progress. Presumably, your second senior brother has already explained this basic knowledge to you. Yes, second senior brother has told disciple before. The cultivation techniques in the cultivation world are roughly divided into the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. And the physiques of cultivators are also divided into these 5 types. If one has the same physique, cultivating the cultivation technique of the same attribute is most suitable. If one cultivates other cultivation techniques that don't counter each other, then the result will be twice the effort for half the result. If one cultivates a cultivation technique that counters each other, then one will not have great success and may even be in danger. And it's roughly like that. Actually, there are many things to pay attention to. You will slowly understand them in the future. Master won't say much here. Xiao Yuehong nodded, then took out a fist-sized bead from his storage bag and said, Do you still remember this bead? Xiao Hua glanced at it and nodded. Disciple remembers. 2 years ago, after Disciple entered the first level of Qi refining, Disciple's cultivation didn't make any progress. So, Sect Master let Disciple use it. And this bead is the 5 elements bead that detects the body's attribute. As Xiao Yuehong spoke, he brought the bead close to his body and struck it with a spell. The bead emitted a dazzling blue brilliance. Master is of the water attribute, so this bead emitted a blue brilliance. Xiao Yuehong took the bead away and said, "You also know that Master is a bit lazy. Normally, when the sect accepts a disciple and imparts a cultivation technique to the first level of qi refining, the first step is to test the disciple's attribute and see if it matches the sect's cultivation technique. If the attribute doesn't match, then the disciple's perception and other conditions will be considered. Only when the disciple meets the sect's requirements will the cultivation technique be imparted. Master hasn't accepted a disciple for many years, and you are the only one. So, when I imparted the cultivation technique to you, I didn't test it. When you stepped into the first level of qi refining, Master was pleasantly surprised. Master thought that your body was of the water attribute, and that your aptitude was even more outstanding. But afterwards, when I saw that you didn't advance, I thought of this problem. Do you still remember the situation at that time?" Disciple remembers. At that time, this bead simply didn't emit any brilliance. Sect Master's face was very shocked. Xiao Huan naturally remembered. Master didn't say anything at that time, because a constitution like yours without any attribute, and I've never heard of it before. Even a mediocre person with all 5 elements would emit a kind of white light. These people can practice any cultivation technique, but they can't practice any cultivation technique to the extreme. Unless they have the highest aptitude, they won't be able to make a name for themselves in the cultivation world. Xiao Yuehong smiled and said, "However, a person like you, without the slightest brilliance, Master has never heard of it before. And if you weren't in my Shanghuaming, then no one would be able to explain your origins to you." Then, disciples' origins? Xiao Hua's face lit up with joy as he asked urgently, "Didn't I just say it? My Shanghuaming's records are very strange." Master also didn't finish reading them completely. It was only when Master saw that your constitution was special that I thought of going to the ancient records to look it up. Very fortunately, in an unknown jade slip, Master found a record that somewhat matched your constitution. That's... Xiao Hua couldn't help but urge, "How is it similar to disciples?" And the ancient records say that there are celestials in the overseas Kinwu Island. Celestials are incomparably tall, and their constitution is different from that of ordinary people. They aren't divided into the 5 elements. Celestials have extremely long lifespans, and their cultivation progress is extremely slow. However, their magic power is boundless. The cultivators of the Xiaoyu continent can't compare to them. Overseas? Celestials? Xiao Hua was greatly distracted. I came from overseas? Chapter 1272. Xiao Yuehong shrugged his shoulders. "Xiao Hua, I only said that you were extremely similar to the celestial race overseas. Sea beasts roam freely in the sea. That's not the world of cultivators. Even nascent soul seniors don't dare to go deep. Even if you were a celestial, it's impossible for you to come to my Dawn Rain continent. Oh, also celestials are giants. I reckon that it's because their meridians are several times more than us cultivators that their magic power increases slowly during cultivation. Although you are tall, you are only taller than me by a head. You are far from being a giant. Of course, I can't say for sure that you are absolutely unrelated to the celestial group." Xiao Yuehong smiled. "When your magic power is profound and your magical powers are extensive, you can go overseas to take a look. Strange, Sect Master, if no one has returned from overseas, how can there be such records in our sect's ancient books?" Xiao Hua suddenly asked. I don't know. Xiao Yuehong naturally thought about it long ago. He only shook his head and said, "I'm just stating facts and telling you. Next, I want to talk about your meridians. My meridians, are there any peculiarities?" Xiao Hua rubbed his hands naturally, as if his meridians were there. Whether or not it's peculiar, I can't say for sure." Xiao Yuehong looked pensive. "Didn't I say just now that I, Shanghuaming, don't have many cultivation techniques, but I do have a lot of other miscellaneous techniques. However, the majority of them can't be cultivated. I was curious in my early years and practiced an unnamed technique. It's used to detect the cultivation of demon beasts. Detect the cultivation of demon beasts. Xiaohua was puzzled. What's the use of this? I don't know. I once tried this technique in the depths of Yellowflower Ridge, but it didn't have any effect. Xiao Yuehong was somewhat embarrassed, but then his face lit up. The only place it can be used is on your meridians. Me? My meridians? Detect the cultivation of demon beasts? Xiao Hua jumped in fright. Sect Master, you don't think I'm a demon beast, right? No, you could be a demon beast. Xiao Yuehong said with a smile. If you were a demonic beast, then your cultivation would be at least in the demigod realm. How could you be in the Qi refining realm? Divinity transformation? Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat for no reason. Just as he was about to ask, Xiao Yuehong continued. Only demonic beasts in the deification realm can take human form, and to take human form like you, I'm afraid it's not some tribulation. Oh, Xiao Hua nodded slightly. He wanted to ask something, but he threw it to the back of his mind. Actually, when I picked you up outside, I had already checked your body. Your dantian and meridians did not have any traces of cultivation. But what makes me think that your meridians are very special? How should I put it? Although your meridians don't show any signs of cultivation, they're very tough and very lively. Perhaps you could say that they are full of life force. Because I've practiced that technique before, I'm somewhat sensitive to this. After I brought you to Shihua Peak, I used that technique to examine your meridians. Your meridians seem to be alive. How is this possible? Xiao Hua was extremely astonished. I only said that they seem to be alive. That's all. To be more specific, they seem to be like a snake. Like a snake's meridians? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Yes, I was also astonished, so I left you at Shihua Peak. I went to the secret room to check the ancient records. When you woke up, you didn't see me and walked down Shihua Peak by yourself and fell into the cold pond. Then, did Sect Master find anything? How could I find anything? I only felt that your meridians were different. As for whether they were real or not, how would I know? Then, he looked at the statue of Hua floating in the air and muttered, perhaps it's because I, Shang Huoming, have some inexplicable connection with this serpent-tailed deity. That's why I thought so much. Even a nascent soul or spirit-severing stage senior might not know about this matter. Xiao Yuehong looked at Xiao Hua with a smile and said, I've said so much. You must have been confused long ago. Xiao Hua bowed and smiled bitterly. Disciple naturally understands. Sect Master said so much because Disciple's origin is unknown and there are so many strange things about Disciple body. And these strange things can only be faintly perceived by Sect Master. Others definitely won't be able to discover them. Yes. Xiao Yuehong sighed and said, if your aptitude alone wasn't enough, I wouldn't be worried. But now it seems that it's far from what I thought back then, so I don't dare to easily take you into Shang Huoming. But all of this is just Sect Master's imagination. Xiao Hua said somewhat naively. He catch it. Xiao Yuehong threw out the bead in his hand and let Xiao Hua catch it. He made a hand seal and said, you don't have any of the 5 elements. This is the most obvious evidence. But when he said this, the 5 elements bead in Xiao Hua's hand gradually lit up and emitted an extremely faint red brilliance. How did you become a fire attribute? Xiao Yuehong was stunned. Although the red brilliance in front of him was very faint and shallow, it was still a brilliance. This was absolutely undeniable. Sect Master, you see, you made a mistake, right? Xiao Hua said in surprise. The attribute of the Constitution, can it still be changed? Xiao Yuehong made another hand seal. The bead still emitted a red light, but it didn't look like it didn't have any light. Strange. Xiao Yuehong shook his head vigorously. There wasn't any light before? You saw it yourself. Disciple forgot how many years it was. Xiao Hua naturally denied it. It's only been 2 years. How did it become many years? Xiao Yuehong glared at him. Xiao Hua's eyes were wide open and very spirited. He looked at Xiao Yuehong with sparkling eyes. Sect Master, Disciple really doesn't remember. Disciple knows that Disciple's constitution is a fire attribute. Although cultivating Shang Huaming's heart technique is a bit far-fetched, I've already cultivated to the second level of qi refining and haven't seen any abnormalities. Ah, okay, how could Xiao Yuan not know Xiao Hua's thoughts? He just waved his hand. Master has already said so much. Presumably, you only remember Master's thoughts. You should have an incredible background. There's no need to enter a small sect like Shang Huaming. Seeing Xiao Hua smile and not answer, he said again, let's go. Master will take you out. Go back to cherishing Flower Peak's medicine garden. Take advantage of these few days to think carefully. Master will go through the ancient books and see if your constitution's change is related to the sect master. Yes, sect master. Xiao Hua agreed. He didn't have any plans to think about it again. Following the sect master out of the inheritance palace, Xiao Hua bowed and flew back to cherishing Flower Peak. Xiao Yuehong stood there, looking at Xiao Hua's speed that was a bit faster than Gong Mingwei and the others. A bitter smile appeared on his face. How could he not want to accept Xiao Hua as a disciple? Not to mention 3 years of feelings. Just Xiao Hua's ability to refine top-grade medicinal pills was enough to make him laugh for several days. But it was precisely because Xiao Hua had no clue about his origins that Xiao Yuehong was very worried. He was afraid that a moment of inappropriateness would bring disaster to his little Shang Huaming. Ah, let's leave it to the heavens. Xiao Yuehong turned and entered the secret room again. Yellow Flower Ridge's night sky was originally very quiet. Usually, the sound of insects and frogs would be heard from time to time, giving people the illusion of a secluded orchid in an empty valley. But these few days, it was different from before. Not to mention the thick dark clouds gradually expanding, covering the entire Yellow Flower Ridge. The bright moonlight couldn't penetrate. Just the lightning that leaped out from the dark clouds brought a suffocating pressure to Yellow Flower Ridge. Not to mention Xiao Yuehong and Xiao Hua. Even the common sounds of insects and frogs had disappeared. The entire Yellow Flower Ridge was deathly silent, as if all the living things had hidden in a place they thought was safe. Xiao Hua's heart throbbed. The meridians in his body were even more bizarre. Just as Xiao Yuehong had said, they seemed to have a life of their own. Xiao Hua could clearly sense that his meridians, under this silent pressure, had a kind of fear, a kind of excitement, and a kind of pleasant surprise. Moreover, his entire meridians were trembling, wriggling slightly. Only when the pressure reached the Shanzhong acupoint in his heart, his meridians were firmly suppressed. It was as if there was a mountain pressing down on him, unable to budge at all. With such strange meridians, Xiao Hua naturally couldn't cultivate. He wanted to go to Minushi Peak, but he was afraid that Xiao Yuehong would see the abnormality in his meridians and not put him into Shenhuaming. Therefore, after looking at the spirit herbs in the medicinal garden and finding nothing inappropriate, he directly went to the summit of Shihua Peak. The summit of Shihua Peak was also windless. The surrounding air seemed to be stagnant. Xiao Hua stood there with a heavy heart, as if a great danger was gathering in the air. Strange. What kind of unforeseen event could happen? Xiao Hua was rather puzzled. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew, the air slightly moved, and then, unable to be stopped, a gale suddenly rose in the entire Shihua Peak. The wind came swiftly and violently. Xiao Hua almost couldn't open his eyes. Walala. The sound of water could still be heard in the deathly still night sky despite the gale. Little White. Xiao Hua forcefully opened his eyes. He had already seen a little white snake slowly flying out from the mountain stream of Shihua Peak at the place where the sound of water and wind came from. At this moment, Little White didn't seem to see Xiao Hua. That little snake's head was straight up, its thin red tongue would stretch out from time to time. Those bean-sized eyes flashed with a stern look, staring straight at the sky, unyielding and provocative. This battle array is directed at Little White. Xiao Hua immediately understood. This guy, what is he trying to do? Without waiting for Xiao Hua to think further, the dark clouds above Shihua Peak suddenly emitted the sound of thunder. The entire dark cloud gradually turned red, as if it was being burned by fire. This fiery red spread extremely quickly, and in the blink of an eye, all the dark clouds had turned into one color. Moreover, within these fiery clouds, ear-splitting thunder was brewing. Tribulation? Xiaohua instantly recalled what his second senior brother had said. 3 years ago, this yellow flower ridge had been struck by lightning. It seemed like a lightning tribulation. Little White's lightning tribulation? Xiaohua somewhat didn't believe it, but just as his doubts were born, a dragon's roar came from Little White's mouth. At the same time, Little White's small snake body suddenly expanded. Chapter 1273. Under the thunderous tribulation clouds, Little White let out a dragon's roar. Its entire body suddenly swelled up like a balloon. It grew to the same size as Cherishing Flower Peak and was thicker than dozens of water vats combined. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a huge dragon. This is Little White. Xiaohua didn't dare to believe his own eyes. He rubbed his eyes with his hands and looked carefully. Of course, it was a huge white dragon. This huge white dragon coiled its huge body and was slowly twisting in the air above Cherishing Flower Peak. A kind of silent pressure gradually spread from the majestic dragon's body. However, in Xiaohua's eyes, there were many places on the dragon's winding body where the dragon's scales had yet to form. There were also many places where the foreclaws were missing. Even the dragon's head, the dragon's horns, and the dragon's shape were still empty. This is Little White's lightning tribulation. As long as it survives the lightning tribulation, it can transform into a dragon? Xiaohua instantly understood. Right at this moment, the lightning tribulation that had been brewing for a long time fell from the sky like a thunderbolt the moment all the tribulation clouds lit up at the same time. Seeing the lightning flashing and falling from the sky, that little white dragon seemed to have already made plans. Its winding body wriggled faster, and its huge head let out a deafening dragon's roar. It opened its big mouth, and a waterfall like blue brilliance shot out from its mouth and rushed straight into the air. The light sound, like boiling water being poured on top of snow, was heard. That blue brilliance simply didn't last long under the golden lightning and was completely torn apart. The entire brilliance gradually melted along the edges of the tear, and the lightning streaked across the sky, about to hit the little white dragon's head. Logically speaking, this lightning tribulation was Little White's dragon transformation tribulation and had nothing to do with a cultivator like Xiaohua. However, the instant the lightning tribulation struck, Xiaohua once again felt fear and uneasiness in his meridians. Xiaohua immediately remembered that during the lightning tribulation, there was a certain distance away from the person undergoing the tribulation. Otherwise, it was extremely easy to be affected by the lightning tribulation. Although this lightning tribulation was for demonic beasts, it might also be harmful to cultivators. When he thought up to here, Xiaohua was greatly alarmed, and he slapped the flight talisman, causing his figure to instantly soar up before charging down Cherishing Flower Peak. However, just as his figure flew into the air, within the space of his mind, the sparkling cube of light suddenly spun at an extremely fast speed, emitting a kind of strange fluctuation. The lightning tribulation that was originally striking towards Whitey actually split into half and struck towards Xiaohua's body. Sun Yunzi, who is this person? Far away from Yellow Flower Ridge, in the air, there was an oval mirror reflecting the scene of Xihua Peak. However, the scene was a bit blurry, especially when the lightning tribulation descended, causing the mirror to shake. Facing the mirror were 2 men and 1 woman. The woman was wearing a rainbow-colored dress decorated with bird feathers. She had an egg-shaped face and a pair of eyes that looked both happy and angry. Sitting beside her was a young cultivator wearing a Taoist robe with a thin face. The cultivator held a long sword in his hand and frowned as he looked at the mirror before him. He was the one who had asked the question. How would I know? She's only at the first level of qi refining. I reckon she's Shang Huoming's disciple who hasn't entered the sect yet. The one who answered him was a tall, fair-skinned, and beardless Taoist with an incomparably handsome appearance. He looked rather young. These three people looked very young, but their cultivations were all unfathomable. The last one to answer was the nascent soul cultivator who had instructed the 10,000 Poisons sect to attack Shanghuoming. His name had already been called out, and it was Sun Yunzi. Sun Yunzi was the sect master of the Shanghua sect, one of the three great cultivation sects in the country of Shi. Who else could stand side by side with him besides the sect masters of the three great cultivation sects in the country of Shi, Taoist Lu Ming of the Seven Secret sect, and Fairy Ingzhua of the Xuanyan sect? This Shang Huoming's disciple really has no manners. What is he doing on the mountain peak in the middle of the night? Fairy Ingzhua frowned and coldly said, "Oh no, why did the lightning tribulation split into half and strike him?" Even Sun Yunzi himself couldn't help but cry out when he saw the lightning tribulation that was as thick as a bucket strike, Xiaohua. He's courting death. Taoist Lu Ming snorted. A mere Qi refining disciple actually dares to come to the lightning tribulation area. That's a place that even nascent soul cultivators like us don't dare to set foot in. He must be tired of living. It's a little strange. Sun Yunzi was slightly taken aback. The lightning tribulation of this demonic beast. It's unlikely to affect mortals. With a burst of crackling sounds, the mirror in front of the three people suddenly shattered, and they couldn't see anything. "Let's go." Sun Yunzi didn't have time to say anything else. His figure turned into a rainbow and shot straight towards the yellow flower ridge. As he flew, he transmitted his voice. The second wave of lightning tribulation has already arrived. I don't know how many heavenly thunders this demonic beast has. If we're late, I'm afraid that demonic beast Naiden will transform into a dragon, and we'll have to return empty-handed. Taoist Lu Ming and Fairy Ingzhua also turned into rainbows, and their speed didn't seem to be slower than Sun Yunzi's. Both of them flew towards a yellow flower ridge. On a yellow flower ridge, White Yi's head was struck by lightning. Half of it split off and hit Xiaohua, who was trying to escape in midair. Under the incomparably powerful heavenly thunders, Xiaohua simply didn't have any power to fight back. Before the heavenly thunders could reach his body, he fainted. His body fell from midair into the rubble of Shihua Peak. The bucket-sized heavenly thunders, with a trace of deep red in them, rapidly struck Xiaohua, instantly destroying his Taoist robe and completely charring his skin. However, when Xiaohua's body was about to be destroyed by the heavenly thunders, the light cube in his mind flashed continuously, and all the heavenly thunders were absorbed by the light cube. After absorbing the heavenly thunders, the light cube suddenly expanded, becoming slightly bigger than before. As the light cube expanded, some strange things came out from the light cube, and were sent into Xiaohua's mind. The heavenly thunders from the ninth heaven were fatal to Xiaohua, but to Whitey, who was in the midst of transforming into a dragon, it was different. Facing the heavenly thunders, Whitey twisted its body, trying to dodge with all its might. However, the heavenly thunders seemed to have already locked onto Whitey. No matter how it dodged, the bucket-sized heavenly thunders accurately hit White Yi's dragon head. Roar! Whitey roared again, showing an extremely painful appearance. Its already dragonized body trembled, and traces of blood seeped out from its body. And as the splendor of the lightning continued to strike and curl around White Yi's body, the previously unclear dragon scales, dragon horns, dragon whiskers, and so on also gradually appeared and gradually solidified as White Yi's body trembled. White Yi's entire essence, energy and spirit seemed to have been sucked out of thin air. It gradually weakened and gradually became sluggish. When White Yi powerlessly floated in midair, the lightning on its body also gradually disappeared, and the tribulation clouds in the sky began to flicker, brewing the second heavenly thunders. Actually, when Whitey was struck by the heavenly thunders, and when Xiaohua took half of it, she had already sensed it. However, right now, she was at the crucial point of transforming into a dragon. If she was careless, her soul might scatter. How could she still have the time to check on Xiaohua? And when Xiaohua's figure landed on the ground, Whitey had already withstood the first heavenly thunders. Just as she was about to fly over, a loud kacha sound rang out, and the second heavenly thunders struck down. This second heavenly thunders was a bit smaller than the first, and the trace of orange splendor was a bit thicker than the red splendor of the first heavenly thunders. Whitey knew that each heavenly thunders was stronger than the last, so she didn't dare to be distracted. She only tried her best to move her body, trembling slightly. Opening her mouth, she spat out another blue splendor, wanting to welcome the heavenly thunders. However, this splendor was clearly a lot fainter than the first wave. However, when the second heavenly thunders struck midair, another strange change occurred. Another half of the heavenly thunders were attracted by Xiaohua, who had fallen on a mountain rock and directly struck his already charred body. The cube of light flashed with another kind of fluctuation. Not only was the entire heavenly thunders absorbed by the cube of light, even a trace of orange thunder essence within the heavenly thunders was also absorbed by the light particles within the cube of light. The tribulation lightning was the punishment of heaven and earth. It contained the will of heaven and earth, and this was the manifestation of the heavenly Tao. This second heavenly thunders was different from the first. Starting from the second heavenly thunders, it contained a trace of the heavenly Tao. Once the heavenly Tao entered the space behind Xiaohua's head, it was like a fuse and also like a kind of power. Within the space, there was a burst of thunder, and with a rumble, the entire space shook, as if something was attracted by the trace of the heavenly Tao within the heavenly thunders, slowly rotating. Such a strange change occurred in Xiaohua's mind, but one couldn't see any difference on the outside. The Taoist robe on his body had long been destroyed, and his entire body was charred black. His entire life force was withdrawn into the space of his mind, supporting the changes of the heavenly Tao within the space. The little white dragon beside him was endlessly shocked. It really didn't know why the heavenly thunders were divided by Xiaohua again and again. The only thing it could guess was that Xiaohua was resisting the tribulation lightning for it. Suddenly, an incomparable gratitude arose in its immature heart. Little White was originally grateful to Xiaohua. 3 years ago, Little White had succeeded in cultivating the dragonization ability. However, its original body was still a little white snake. Although it had cultivated for countless years in Shanghua Ming, when it shed its snake body and transformed into a dragon body, its cultivation was still far from the Xiantian level. During that lightning tribulation, which was not very powerful, it had suffered extremely serious injuries. It was almost impossible for it to survive. And just as Little White was about to fall, it encountered Xiaohua in the cold pond. From Xiaohua's body, it felt a kind of familiar aura. What was even more mysterious was that it was blessed with good fortune and bit Xiaohua's arm. Xiaohua's blood saved Little White, and even brought forward the second tribulation lightning that it should have encountered after countless years of cultivation to today. Little White had long sensed the tribulation lightning, but it had always been suppressing itself, so this tribulation lightning didn't come for a long time. Tonight, Little White really couldn't suppress it, and had no choice but to face the tribulation. But what it didn't expect was that Xiaohua, who gave it a second life, would actually face the tribulation for it again. This gratitude, although it was a demonic beast, was also engraved in its bones. Chapter 1274. Although Xiaohua had already taken away half of the heavenly lightning, the heavenly lightning was still not something that Little White could withstand. The golden heavenly lightning that was almost as thick as a bucket pierced through the light that Little White spat out, and once again hit Little White's body. Whitey's body trembled violently, and the dragon's roars came one after another. It was an extreme pain, and its entire body was rolling in the air. Dragon's blood seeped out from its body, dyeing White E's entire body red. After the second heavenly lightning, Little White was already lying limply in the air, as if it didn't have the slightest bit of magic power and strength. It was extremely weak, and in the tribulation cloud, the lightning was still flashing. The third heavenly lightning roared and was about to strike. Little White raised its arrogant dragon head, and its lantern-like eyes unwillingly looked at the rapidly flashing red clouds in the air. It didn't expect that the second heavenly tribulation would actually be several times stronger than the first. The first time, it was able to withstand the third heavenly lightning, and this time, with Xiao Hua taking away half of the heavenly lightning, it was actually able to withstand the second heavenly lightning. Unfortunately, Little White was still just a demon beast. It didn't understand that no matter how powerful the dragon transformation art was, it was impossible for Little White to undergo the second heavenly tribulation within 3 years. The reason why Little White could undergo the heavenly tribulation was all because it sucked Xiao Hua's blood. But at that time, if Little White didn't suck Xiao Hua's blood, it would have already fallen into the cycle of reincarnation. How could it have another chance? Therefore, Xiao Hua's success, Xiao Hua's defeat, Xiao Hua's drinking and pecking, the way of karma. Little White was unwilling and unyielding. Its huge dragon head roared towards the sky, and then, with a shake of its head, a dark golden light spat out from its mouth and directly shot toward Xiao Hua and disappeared into Xiao Hua's body. Then, Little White's eyes shot out a resolute look, and it opened its mouth again. A pearl that was like a resplendent full moon was spat out from its mouth. It was the inner core that it had refined for countless years. The inner core flew out of Little White's mouth and directly rushed into the air, just in time to welcome the third heavenly lightning before the third bolt of lightning, which contained the yellow thunder marrow, could hit Little White's Niden. Half of it was absorbed by the light cube in Xiao Hua's head, while the other half struck the Niden. With a cracking sound, the blue radiance on the surface of the inner core was cracked by the heavenly lightning. Although Whitey was under the inner core and was not directly hit by the heavenly lightning, Whitey's body was as if it was punched by the might of heaven and earth. It shook violently, and fresh blood dripped out. A large amount of dragon blood splashed onto Xiao Hua's already charred body. The third bolt of lightning was blocked by Little White's inner core. Only a small amount of lightning struck Little White's body. After this bolt of lightning passed, Little White's body was completely restored. Little White had completely turned into a dragon. However, Little White seemed to be exhausted and on the verge of death. But at that moment, the tribulation clouds that had originally ended gathered once more, and the fourth bolt of heavenly lightning that contained the green lightning essence was shining and brewing. How could Xiao Yuehong, the leader of Shang Huoming, not know about such a lightning tribulation on Shihua Peak? When the lightning tribulation was formed, he was alarmed. Before his divine sense could sweep across Shihua Peak, it was immediately crushed by the pressure of the heavenly lightning. Immediately after, the entire Yellow Flower Ridge was covered by the tribulation clouds. No magic power or divine ability could be used. Therefore, Xiao Yuehong could only sit upright in front of the pill furnace, closing his eyes and holding his breath. He did not dare to use any magic power, for fear that the might of heaven and earth would affect him. Xiao Yuehong had also thought of Xiao Hua. However, he also knew that the more profound one's cultivation base was, the more sensitive they were to the lightning tribulation, and the greater the damage they would suffer. Xiao Hua was only at the second level of qi refining, and was the same as an ordinary person. It was impossible for him to sense the pressure of the heavenly lightning. Most likely, he thought it was just an ordinary rain of thunder. But he never imagined that on Shihua Peak, Xiao Hua had another, thrilling and lucky encounter. Sun Yunzi, Reverend Lu Enai, and Fairy Yingzhua were very far away from Yellow Flower Ridge, but their escape light was extremely fast. When the fourth heavenly lightning struck, they had already arrived at the periphery of Yellow Flower Ridge. However, at this time, The entire yellow flower ridge was covered by the tribulation clouds. Looking from afar, one could only see the flickering red clouds in the pitch-black sky and the thick lightning bolts lingering and brewing in the red clouds. As for the scene inside Yellow Flower Ridge, it was all blocked by the innate divine restriction of the way of heaven. Although the three of them were great experts of the late nascent soul stage, they absolutely could not peep into it. As soon as they arrived at Yellow Flower Ridge and saw that the tribulation clouds had disappeared, Sun Yunzi was delighted. He transmitted his voice. Fellow Taoists, with our speed, the tribulation clouds should have just struck down 3 heavenly lightning bolts. Although the tribulation of demon beasts is somewhat different from the tribulation of human cultivators, their general realms should be similar. As far as I know, this python dragon should be at the early spirit severing stage. After passing through this tribulation, it should reach the middle spirit severing stage. 3 heavenly lightning bolts, and it can reach the middle spirit severing stage. This python dragon, I wonder how it cultivates? Fairy Ingshua sighed casually. Sun Yunzi's expression did not change. He smiled and said, "Actually, I want more heavenly lightning bolts to strike down. The more heavenly lightning bolts there are, the more useful the python dragon's inner core will be to us. These 3 heavenly lightning bolts. Just 3 heavenly lightning bolts? Fellow Taoist, you sure talk big." Reverend Lu and I also transmitted his voice. Could it be that passing the tribulation is so easy in your eyes? Chiqiao sect, Shanghua sect, and Xuanyin sect were equal in strength in the country of Xi, so there were usually some disputes between them. As Fairy Ingshua was a woman, Reverend Lu and I was kind to her, but she was not so polite to Sun Yunzi. Cough, cough. Sun Yunzi did not expect Reverend Lu and I to make things difficult for him. He was slightly embarrassed and said, "Of course I care about the heavenly lightning bolts when we pass the tribulation. Otherwise, I would not have dragged you two to ask for the python dragon's inner core. It's just that there's only one python dragon's inner core. If the 3 of us share it equally, it is still somewhat lacking to refine the true python dragon's inner core to improve our cultivation. I only hope that the more heavenly lightning bolts there are, the more effective the python dragon's inner core will be." Hearing Sun Yunzi's unusual admission of defeat, Reverend Lu and I also understood the importance of today's action. She snorted coldly and said no more. Sun Yunzi squinted his eyes and glanced at the tribulation cloud. Just as he was about to say something, suddenly, the tribulation cloud that had already dispersed slightly flickered again, turning back into an orange color. The lightning bolts in the clouds flashed even more fiercely. However, those lightning bolts actually turned into a pure green color. The Tao of Heaven was the most just. Originally, Little White's tribulation was 3 heavenly lightning bolts. However, when the 3 heavenly lightning bolts fell, half of them were drawn away by Xiaohua. Little White itself did not go through the complete test of the 3 heavenly lightning bolts. Therefore, when the lightning tribulation changed, an additional 4th heavenly lightning bolt was released. This heavenly lightning bolt was even more powerful, directly turning into a green heavenly lightning bolt. This is the 4th heavenly lightning bolt. Sun Yunzi's mouth was full of surprise, but his eyes were also filled with excitement. He knew clearly that the more heavenly lightning bolts there were, the better the python dragon's inner core would be. More importantly, the dragon transformation art would be more complete. I'm afraid this is the last heavenly lightning bolt. Let's quickly find a position and surround the entire Yellow Flower Ridge to prevent the python dragon from escaping. Fairy Ingshua transmitted her voice. Fellow Taoist, you are right. When a python transforms into a dragon, it shed its snake skin and become a dragon's body. There's a period of time when it is at its weakest. This period of time is extremely short. If we don't take advantage of this opportunity, I'm afraid we won't have another chance in the future. Most importantly, our auras will be remembered by this python dragon. In the future, we will have another doppelganger in the Xiaoyu continent. Do I need you to tell me that? Immortal Lu Hong transmitted his voice disdainfully. The greater the harvest, the greater the risk. Even mortals know this truth. How can we not know it? Well, in that case, we'll stick to our previous agreement. Each of us will guard one side. Sun Yunzi didn't say anything more. He waved his hand and flew to the northeast of Yellow Flower Ridge. Seeing that Sun Yunzi had left, Reverend Lu Hong and Fairy Yingjue glanced at each other, then went in different directions. Before leaving, Fairy Yingjue sent a message to Reverend Lu Hong, fellow Taoist Lu Kong. Sun Yunzi seems to be a little different today. He usually confronts you with equal harshness. Why is he so patient today? Unless there's something else. It must be that he's gathered all the other materials to concoct the Python Dragon Pill and is only waiting for the Python Dragon's inner core. The Python Dragon Pill is one of the shortcuts to the Doppelganger realm. Although it only increases the chance of success by 30%, it is still worth the risk. Immortal Lu Hong seemed to have sensed something. You're absolutely right. Fairy Yingjue transmitted her voice. Then they separated. Humph, you old bastard Lu Hong. Sun Yunzi flew to the place where he was, and he was already gnashing his teeth in hatred. Although a nascent soul grandmaster state of mind was already perfect, he just couldn't stand the arrogance of the Seven Skills sect. Wait until I find the dragonization skill, cultivate my body to perfection, and successfully enter the Doppelganger realm. Then, I will personally destroy your Seven Skills sect. Rumble, a burst of thunder, which was very different from the silence just now. Sun Yunzi was startled and thought to himself, I was just thinking. I didn't make any hard oath. When he raised his eyes and looked at the Yellow Flower Ridge, the tribulation cloud changed again. The Yellow Flower Ridge was originally covered by the innate divine restriction, so no sound or scene could be seen. But now, the innate divine restriction seemed to have collapsed. A chopstick-sized heavenly thunder streaked across the sky, like a centipede, and struck down. Although this heavenly thunder was much thinner, its color was almost pure green, which was different from the previous heavenly thunder. Around the heavenly thunder, countless small space cracks were torn open, showing the infinite power of this heavenly thunder. Roar! A huge dragon roar resounded through the whole Yellow Flower Ridge. Sun Yunzi and the others who were in midair felt dizzy, and their bodies involuntarily fell from the sky. Sun Yunzi was shocked. He waved his hand, and an oval-shaped jade butterfly flew out from his sleeve. With a slight flap of its wings, it flew to Sun Yunzi's feet and supported him. The long sword in Immortal Lu Hong's hand turned into the shape of a dragon, and also caught Immortal Lu Hong's body when he lost his balance. Fairy Yingjue was even more surprised. The 1,000 feathers rainbow-colored gown on her body emitted a colorful brilliance and lifted her up into the air. When Fairy Yingjue circulated her magic power and woke up from the dizziness, the last heavenly thunder had already disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1275. When Sun Yunzi and the others fell, the little white dragon was roaring angrily. When it saw the green, heavenly lightning, it felt that there was no chance of survival. It hardened its heart and spat out a dragon's breath to support the cracked inner core. After the green, heavenly lightning split into half and was absorbed by Xiaohua, it struck the inner core and shattered it into pieces. The little white dragon writhed in pain in the air. Countless cracks appeared on its newly formed dragon body. As Little White writhed, the cracks gradually tore apart and chunks of flesh fell from the sky. Clang, clang, clang. Another burst of green heavenly lightning struck Little White's body. All the cracked flesh exploded again, and even Little White's bloody dragon head was split in half. But at this moment, something strange happened again. From the split dragon head, a dragon much smaller than the Little White dragon flew out. This dragon also had the appearance of Little White, but its entire body was illusory. This illusory form was different from the illusory form before the lightning tribulation. Every part of this dragon's body was intact, and every tiny dragon scale could be seen. This was the little white dragon that had completely passed the lightning tribulation. The little white dragon rushed into the air, and countless amounts of heaven and earth spiritual energy fused into its illusory body. It gradually condensed and formed a dragon body. The little white dragon didn't care about this at all and directly rushed towards the inner core in the air. It opened its mouth and swallowed the shattered inner core into its stomach. The lightning tribulation is over. For bolts of heavenly lightning, the three were overjoyed. The more heavenly lightning there was, the higher the cultivation of the python dragon. Naturally, the inner core was worth such a huge risk. The three of them circulated their magic power and flew towards Yellow Flower Ridge. At this time, the tribulation clouds had already dissipated and the entire Yellow Flower Ridge was filled with chaotic heaven and earth spiritual energy. The heaven and earth spiritual energy was also filled with an extremely violent aura. It was as if an extremely small fireball technique could ignite the entire Yellow Flower Ridge. Sun Yunzi and the others were all late nascent soul stage cultivators and could already freely control the heaven and earth spiritual energy. This chaotic heaven and earth spiritual energy couldn't affect their abilities too much. When they saw the little white dragon that was about to swallow the inner core in the air above Shihua Peak, they were all dumbfounded. Is this a python dragon that just underwent its tribulation? Did it fail to pass the tribulation? Reverend Lu Su was extremely shocked. He transmitted the message to Sun Yunzi and Fairy Yingzhua. They were all late-stage nascent soul experts, and were also figures standing at the pinnacle of Dawn Rain Continent. What kind of bizarre scene had they not seen before? Although he hadn't transcended the tribulation, there were records in the sex records. He had once observed others transcending the tribulation from afar. Although the tribulation of demonic beasts was different from the tribulation of cultivators, there was no difference in essence. Both were the heavenly thunder-tempering body and the heavenly demon's test. These tests were basically a test of one's physical body. Demonic beasts' physical bodies were even stronger, and they had gone through multiple heavenly tribulations. However, they had never heard of demonic beasts abandoning their physical bodies and existing in the form of soul essences after transcending the tribulation. Cultivators could only abandon their physical bodies when they failed their tribulations. Sun Yunzi was secretly delighted. He thought to himself, the dragonization incantation is indeed a supreme incantation. It's actually willing to abandon the physical body and reconstruct the dragon body. If I were to cultivate it, perhaps I would also be able to obtain a Sciention body condensed from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. However, there was no expression on his face. He only said in astonishment, "Yes, is this the python dragon's soul essence?" "Oh no." Fellow Taoists, quickly look, this soul essence is condensing, as if, "Quick, fellow Taoists, don't waste any time. Let's take advantage of the fact that this python dragon hasn't recovered and kill it quickly. It doesn't matter if it's a soul essence or something else. The core of the python dragon is the most important." Fairy Yingzhua sensed that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was rapidly converging into the little white dragon's body. She felt that something was wrong and immediately transmitted a message to the two. "Sun Yunzi, you must know the reason." Reverend Lu Su suddenly realized. "I definitely don't know." Fellow Taoist Lu Kong, this is not the time for us to be confused. If there's anything, let's talk about it after we get the python dragon's core. How could Sun Yunzi reveal the truth to him? With a wave of his hand, a chain with several tiny bells hanging on it flew out of his hand and toward the sky above the little white dragon. When the chain flew into the sky, it suddenly expanded. The several bells also clanked loudly. Several different sounds, which seemed to have the effect of absorbing souls, reverberated in the sky above the cherishing flower peak. When Reverend Lu and I and Fairy Ingzhua saw Sun Yunzi take out his most powerful magical treasure, the soul-snatching chain bell, their expressions changed slightly. Their magic powers surged, and their bodies glowed faintly, blocking the sound of the bell that invaded their Dao hearts. Fairy Ingzhua and Reverend Lu Su were not the targets of the soul-snatching chain bell. Just the sound of the chain was already so frightening, not to mention the little white dragon directly under the soul-snatching chain bell. The sound of the bell was like ripples on the surface of water, striking the little white dragon one after another, shaking the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around the little white dragon and disturbing the little white dragon's speed of absorbing spiritual energy. However, a strange scene occurred. When the bell sound fell on the little white dragon's body, the little white dragon did not suffer the pain that Sun Yunzi had imagined, nor did it roll on the ground. Instead, it slightly swayed its body as if it was enjoying the sound. This is bad. Seeing this, Sun Yunzi unconsciously stared blankly, but soon understood. This little white dragon is not in the form of a soul. It has just transformed into a dragon and condensed into a body, so it may not be able to hear any sound. My soul-snatching chain bell can indeed shake the soul, but what this little white dragon cultivates is the dragonization skill, which may be different from ordinary tribulations. Sound attacks won't work, and this python dragon soul is also sturdy. Fellow Taoists, please make your move. Sun Yunzi immediately spread the word that immortal Lu Yun and Fairy Ingzhua were here to help. At this moment, without delay, Fairy Ingzhua clapped her hand, and a slender, radiant stick flew out from the storage pouch on her waist. At the tip of the stick, a large flower bud was about to bloom. It was Fairy Ingzhua's favorite magic weapon, the Tyrant Spring Bud. Fairy Ingzhua held the Tyrant Spring Bud in her hand, and with a push of her magic power, the flower bud at the tip spiraled and gradually bloomed. As the flower bud bloomed, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the surrounding sky surged and gradually condensed into a silken shape beside the flower bud. When the flower bud bloomed into a fresh flower, Fairy Ingzhua let out a thunderous roar, and as if she was pulling a heavy object, she slowly waved her hand. Countless thin silks near the flower bud streaked across the air, driving more spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the surroundings and pounced on the little white dragon. As these thin silks streaked across the air, they made a la-la-la sound, as if the space was about to be torn apart. The entire silks then transformed into a large net, which almost caught the little white dragon's huge body in one fell swoop. The little white dragon also seemed to have sensed that something was wrong. Its dragon body moved, and white clouds gradually formed under its body. This was the sign of dragon follows cloud and tiger follows wind. Unfortunately, the little white dragon had just crossed the tribulation, and its breathing was weak. Moreover, it had not been long since it became a dragon, and its dragon body had not yet condensed. It simply did not have the strength and magic power to escape. It could only hope that it could withstand the attacks of these 3 late Yuanying stage experts before its dragon body condensed. The spiritual silks released by the Tyrant Spring Bud covered the little white dragon's body without any suspense. Fairy Ingzhua's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. These thin silks were extremely powerful. If her cultivation could reach the dividing spirit stage, or even cross the tribulation, she could almost tear the space apart. She had always been at an advantage when she used this Tyrant Spring Bud to fight against her enemies. When others saw her using this magic weapon, they would either run far away or use other magic weapons to defend in the air. How would they dare to let the thin silks formed by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth touch their bodies? Seeing the little white dragon's dragon body twisting a few times, but the net still fell down, Sun Yunzi's heart that should have been happy jumped for no reason. He felt that there should be something missing. Sure enough, when the net fell on the little white dragon's body, there was no scream as Fairy Ingzhua expected. Instead, it was like a clay ox entering the sea, and there was no sound, Not even a ripple. Oh no, seeing this scene, Sun Yunzi immediately understood the warning just now. This little white dragon was currently in the process of forming its body, and it was using the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. This tyrant spring bud, no, even the magic weapons on his body were all using the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to attack. All the attacks that landed on the little white dragon's body would become the spiritual energy for its body forming. How could it be injured? No wonder this little white dragon did not panic. Not only did Sun Yunzi understand, Fairy Yingzhua also understood, and her heart was abnormally angry. Roar with a dragon roar, the little white dragon swung its gigantic head around. A weak but tenacious divine sense swept past. Its two eyes, which were about to form, flashed with mockery. Fortunately, Ai's luck is profound, and I have an affinity with this python's inner core. If not for the two helpers today, I'm afraid I would have to return empty-handed. Sun Yunzi's face was full of surprise, but his heart was secretly happy. Returning empty-handed is one thing, but after provoking this demonic beast of the spirit-severing stage, I'm afraid my Shanghua sect will never have a day of peace. Please, fellow Taoist, Lu Kong, make a move. Sun Yunzi took out a few palm-sized jade pieces from his storage bag and transmitted his voice to Lu Kong. Humph! Lu Kong coldly snorted and flung the scabbard in his hand. An orange-yellow brilliance shone from his hand and flew into the air. Sun Yunzi, of course I will make a move. However, I have to say first, after this matter is done, I want 50% of this python's inner core, not the previous 30%. Lu Kong slightly narrowed his eyes and transmitted his voice. Also, fellow Taoist needs to tell me everything about this python. You? Sun Yunzi obviously didn't expect Lu Kong to change his mind at the last moment and was somewhat caught off guard. But looking at the flying sword that Lu Kong released, he could only clench his teeth and said coldly, I have already told you about the python, and even if I say it again, it will still be the same. I can agree to your request of 50%, but I still need to ask Fairy Yingzhua's opinion. What opinion can I have? Seeing Sun Yunzi push the matter to her, Fairy Yingzhua sneered. Fellow Taoist Lu Kong has a dragon-slaying sword, after all. However, fellow Taoist Lu Kong's sudden change of mind will damage your reputation. Chapter 1276. Ha ha! Reputation is nothing. Only the great Tao is real. Reverend Lu, she laughed wildly and said, Only I have this dragon-slaying technique. If you two fellow Taoists also have this technique, I will let you have it. All right, fellow Taoist Lu Kong, we have agreed. Hurry up and do it. A long delay may cause trouble. Sun Yunzi saw that the little white dragon's body was becoming more and more solid. He couldn't help but feel anxious and urged. At the same time, Sun Yunzi also threw out the stones in his hand. The 4 stones occupied the 4 corners of the sky, trapping the little white dragon in the center. This is... Fairy Yingzhua frowned and looked at the 4 extremely ordinary stones while holding the useless wavy buds in her hand. She scanned them with her divine sense, but didn't find any particularly strong spiritual energy. She couldn't help but feel puzzled. A sharp sword cry resounded in the sky. It was Reverend Lu Shi who activated his magic power to drive the dragon-slaying sword flying in the air. The dragon-slaying sword elongated in the air, about 10 feet long. Its orange-yellow splendor was misty. Reverend Lu, she sat cross-legged in the air with his palms facing the sky. His face was first flushed, then turned into a waxy yellow color. Quick! Reverend Lu, she shouted and released the sword spell in his hand. The dragon-slaying sword streaked across the sky with a piercing sound of wind, chopping straight at the little white dragon. Roar! The sharp sound of wind seemed to have already locked onto the little white dragon. The little white dragon's body turned rapidly, barely facing the dragon-slaying sword. It opened its mouth and spat out a weak water-blue splendor, forming a light screen to block the dragon-slaying sword. Unfortunately, the splendor was too weak. The little white dragon's cultivation base was only at the late stage of foundation establishment. How could it resist the full force attack of a late-stage yuanying expert? With a swish, the light screen was directly split open by the dragon's slaying sword, all the way to the bottom. The little white dragon tried to dodge, but it was still too late. The dragon's body, which couldn't be broken through by the soul-stealing chain bell and wavy buds, now appeared extremely fragile under the dragon-slaying sword. Crack! It struck the little white dragon's abdomen, and a large piece of flesh that had just formed was immediately cut off. Dragon flesh and dragon blood sprinkled all over Shihua Peak. Roar! The little white dragon twisted its enormous body with all its strength because of the pain, then raised its enormous tail and slapped straight towards Reverend Liushi. Good timing. Facing the huge dragon tail, Reverend Liu Su was not frightened at all. Instead, he was overjoyed. He sat upright and motionless, then changed his sword gesture. Following his move, an identical dragon-slaying sword was separated from the previous dragon-slaying sword and hacked horizontally towards the dragon tail of the little white dragon. Crack! In an instant, the sword and the dragon tail collided. The tremendous power of the dragon tail shook the dragon-slaying sword, and its orange splendor was almost disrupted. Meanwhile, the sharpness of the dragon-slaying sword had also shattered the dragon scales on the dragon tail and the strange talismans that had yet to form on the dragon scales. Go! Reverend Liu Su's face slightly changed. His magic power surged, and he sent out another sword gesture. The dragon-slaying sword buzzed, and its splendor condensed again. Then, it rushed forward again. Swish! Just like before, a large piece of flesh fell down and sprinkled on Shihua Peak. Naturally, it also buried Xiao Hua's charred body, which had been struck by the heavenly thunder. Who is it? While watching Reverend Liu Su's dragon-slaying skill, Sun Yunzi sensed that someone was spying on him with his divine will. He turned his head and scanned with his divine will. Then, he saw Xiao Yuehong, who had rushed out after sensing the disturbance on Shihua Peak. Meanwhile, Xiao Yuehong was hiding from the thunder tribulation in the alchemy room of Shihua Peak. That frightening thunder tribulation had made his heart tremble. It was not that there had never been a thunder tribulation in Yellowflower Ridge before, but none of them were as frightening as this one. 4 heavenly thunders in a row almost made Xiao Yuehong lose his mind of doubt. He had no doubt that he would not be able to survive such a frightening thunder tribulation. After the 4 heavenly thunders ended, Xiao Yuehong waited for a while, but no more heavenly thunders were heard. Only then did he come out of the alchemy room, trembling with fear. This was Xiao Yuehong's fate. Just as he flew to Shihua Peak, he heard the roars of dragons and the sounds of fighting. This was the important place of Shang Huoming's sect. As the sect leader, how could Xiao Yuehong not investigate? However, when he flew into the air, he saw the huge white dragon in the sky and the dragon slaying sword above it. Then he sensed 3 nascent soul experts with his divine will. He could not help but have a bad feeling. Although Xiao Yuehong had never seen the 3 sect leaders of the country of Shi, he had heard people describe them. The 3 of them gathered together with Shang Huoming. This was a big event in the country of Shi. Moreover, the 3 of them were besieging a white dragon. Not to mention whether this white dragon belonged to Shang Huoming. Just by seeing this scene, he did not know whether it would be a disaster or a blessing. Sure enough, just as Xiao Yuehong's divine will scanned the area, he was discovered by Sun Yunzi. Xiao Yuehong had a bad feeling and immediately fled. Sun Yunzi went deep into Shang Huoming's important place and killed his guardian spiritual beast. How could he be kind? Just now, he was afraid that the little white dragon would escape, so he did not kill Xiao Yuehong first. Now that Xiao Yuehong had appeared, how could he let him go? With a fierce glint in his eyes, he swung the soul-stealing chain bell in his hand into the air, sending a sound wave towards Xiao Yuehong. Although Xiao Yuehong was already far away from Shihua Peak, the soul-stealing chain bell which had no effect on the little white dragon, was a supreme killing weapon in front of Xiao Yuehong. Xiao Yuehong had almost no strength to fight back. He had just cast a bead-like magic tool into the air when his body immediately flipped in midair. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew, and a net made of heaven and earth spiritual chi covered the sky from top to bottom. There was no resistance, and there was no pause. Xiao Yuehong, who was lying in the air, was cut into countless tiny pieces by the net, turning into flesh and blood falling from the sky. In front of a late Yuan stage cultivator, a foundation establishment stage cultivator was even more inferior than a chi refining stage cultivator, in front of 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 a chi refining stage. Cultivator in front of a chi refining stage cultivator was simply like a baby in front of an adult. Xiao Yuehong did not have any chance to fight back before he was killed on the spot by the two late Yuan stage cultivators. Immediately, Sun Yunzi and Fairy Yingzhua turned their heads indifferently, as if they were killing a small ant, and continued to pay attention to the little white dragon. At this time, the little white dragon situation was worrying. The dragon-slaying sword was flying around the dragon's head, piercing towards the dragon's brain. There was no doubt that once the dragon-slaying sword pierced into the dragon's brain, the little white dragon would have no chance to survive. Roar! The little white dragon roared again. It opened its mouth and spat out a water-blue brilliance. Within the brilliance, the Niden that had been smashed into pieces by the heavenly thunder had already fused by more than half. Good, good. Reverend Liu, she shouted again, and the dragon-slaying sword quickly pierced towards the Niden. Crack! The dragon-slaying sword pierced the Niden. When the Niden broke, the dragon-slaying sword also broke into thousands of pieces. Normally, the Niden of the little white dragon should not be so weak. Unfortunately, there were 3 heavenly thunders and a different dark green heavenly thunder. The Niden that the little white dragon had painstakingly cultivated was already full of holes. How could it resist the sharpness of the dragon-slaying sword? And the magical power of a late Yuan stage expert? Even the physical body that the little white dragon relied on to escape was also in great danger at this time. Seeing the dragon-slaying sword being shattered, Reverend Liu, she didn't seem to be worried at all, as if he had already had a plan in mind. Indeed, once Reverend Liu, she changed a sword spell, those thousands of dragon-slaying sword fragments transformed back into tiny dragon-slaying swords one after another, transforming into a huge sword formation around the little white dragon, trapping the little white dragon in it from all directions. Sword formation? Seeing this, Sun Yunzi and Fairy Yingzhua's expressions changed slightly. The magic formations of the Dawn Rain continent had always been a secret and had been lost for a long time. Ordinary magic formations have been simplified into restrictive spells, and even the magic formations that have been passed down from generation to generation were specious. They only knew how to use them, but did not know how to create new ones, not to mention a sword formation. That was almost a legend among legends. Therefore, when they saw Reverend Liu, she used the legendary sword formation. Both of them felt a chill in their hearts, and became respectful and vigilant towards his fellow Taoist who could not distinguish between friend and foe. Sitting cross-legged, Reverend Liu, she made a sword spell with both of his hands, using his divine sense, which was different from that of an ordinary late Yuan stage expert, to drive the sword formation laid out by the dragon-slaying sword. Hundreds and thousands of tiny flying swords were flying in all directions, blocking all the space around the little white dragon, and gradually approaching the little white dragon. Frightened, the little white dragon gathered the Niden that had been destroyed by the dragon-slaying sword once again. Just when it was about to swallow it into its stomach, suddenly, outside the sword formation, in the 4 corners of the sky, 4 bright spots of light flashed like stars. Not only Reverend Liu Shi, but Fairy Yingzhua was also stunned. They simply did not notice that Sun Yunzi, who was standing beside them, was making a spell with his hands, and 4 different spells struck on the 4 seemingly ordinary stones that he had laid out in the air just now. At this time, The stones had already changed from their usual appearance. Each of them was shining with a dark green brilliance, and within the brilliance, 4 balls of dark green liquid that had been melted into 4 balls were slightly swaying. Along with the swaying of the balls of liquid, countless amounts of spiritual chi of heaven and earth were absorbed by these 4 balls of liquid. Quick, Sun Yunzi let out a clear shout, and a mouthful of his natal energy was spurted out. In front of Sun Yunzi, it divided into 4 balls of liquid, shwa, 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 shwa. 4 consecutive sounds rang out. The 4 balls of liquid were broken by Sun Yunzi's life essence. After the liquid exploded, it disappeared. A net of spirit energy suddenly formed from the liquid. Then, with each corner as the center, it spread in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the spirit energy from the 4 corners intertwined and wrapped around the sword formation and the small white dragon. Withdraw, seeing the net of spiritual chi take shape. Sun Yunzi's face showed a hint of joy. He pointed his finger, and the net of spiritual chi suddenly produced an endless suction force. The Niden that was about to be absorbed into the little white dragon's stomach actually stopped under this suction force and slowly moved away from the little white dragon. Jade Talisman. Fairy Ingzhua almost moaned in her heart. It's a 4-piece jade talisman. Although this jade talisman needs to be activated by Sun Yunzi's natal energy and is at a disadvantage, but a spell that can encircle the little white dragon and absorb the Niden is definitely not something that Sun Yunzi can perform. Chapter 1277. Immediately, Fairy Ingzhua had the same doubts as Reverend Lu Shi. Is it worth so much effort for a mere python dragon's inner core? Judging from Sun Yunzi's preparation, it's complete. I'm afraid it's not something that can be done a day or 2. Could it be there's really some unknown secret behind this? Not to mention Fairy Ingzhua's doubts outside the sword formation. Little white dragon inside the sword formation was in imminent danger. The sword formation was approaching, and its inner core had been taken away by the huge suction force generated by the Jade Talisman. No matter how hard Little White Dragon tried, it was absolutely unable to contend against the sword formation with its current foundation establishment magical power. Roar! Little White Dragon's body rolled for a while. Its dragon consciousness swept over Shihua Peak below. At this moment, the peak of Shihua Peak was in a mess. The flesh and blood of Little White Dragon's body during the tribulation were scattered all over the peak. Among the rocks, among the flesh and blood, Xiaohua was lying there like a dead person, without any breath. A sense of speechless tragedy arose in Little White Dragon's mind that had not yet fully matured. Whoosh! Little White Dragon's body seemed to have been set off by a hurricane. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth within 1,000 feet crazily gathered into Little White Dragon's body. Even a net-like spiritual energy released by the Jade Talisman showed signs of being defeated. The sword formation of the dragon-slaying sword was also somewhat scattered. Quick, this guy is going to use a great magical power. Sun Yunzi was shocked. He sent a sound transmission to Reverend Lu Shi. Fellow Lu Kong, speed up the sword formation. Reverend Lu Shi swept a glance at Sun Yunzi. Without answering, he urged his magical power and divine sense to speed up the sword formation. It was not that he didn't want to speed up, but he was not very proficient in using this sword formation. Moreover, the sword formation itself was not complete. In addition, driving hundreds and thousands of dragon-slaying swords at the same time was already the limit of his divine sense. He wanted to speed up, but he couldn't. Little White Dragon's body was visibly expanding. When the dragon-slaying sword pierced into Little White Dragon's body, Little White Dragon's body was already bigger than before the tribulation. However, this was not the end. The dragon-slaying sword pierced into Little White Dragon's body, and that huge body expanded again. Boom! A loud noise was heard. As if a huge bubble had burst in midair, Little White Dragon's body which had long been condensed by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, suddenly expanded, and its newly formed flesh flew in all directions. The majority of the thousands of dragons slaying swords that pierced into little white dragon's body was annihilated, and the remaining few swords as they were dimmed. They lost control of control. They flew little white dragon's body, scattered, flew. Little white dragon body, little white dragon's bodies, little... Right after that, a 1-foot-tall nascent soul, clad in a strange armor, emerged from the top of Reverend Liu Kong's head. The nascent soul looked exactly the same as Reverend Liu Kong, except that it was also holding a tiny dragon-slaying sword. The nascent soul landed on the top of Reverend Liu Kong's head, its eyes shining with a furious light. With a wave of the tiny sword, the surrounding natural energies were easily mobilized. Hundreds of dragon-slaying swords, which had been knocked away by the little white dragon, flashed dimly and flew back to the tiny sword in the nascent soul's hand. When all the tiny swords fell into the tiny sword and disappeared, a half-broken flying sword appeared in Reverend Liu Kong's hand at the same time. The nascent soul above little white dragon's head glanced at the location of the sword formation, its face filled with surprise and bewilderment. Then it sank down into little white dragon's body and disappeared. Fellow Taoist Sun Yun, that evil dragon is escaping. Little white dragon opened his eyes and pointed his finger. Near the web-like spiritual energy released by the jade talisman, a faint dragon soul flashed rapidly, fleeing towards the north. Fairy Yingzhuo was even more shocked. She was also one of the top 3 experts in the country of Shi, and also a late-stage nascent soul cultivator. What she had seen and heard was absolutely extraordinary. But she did not expect that little white dragon, in such a desperate situation, could still escape with its soul. Sun Yunzi was shocked, but then a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He spat out another mouthful of his natal energy. The web-like spiritual energy that had been scattered by the explosion gradually stabilized. Part of the web wrapped around little white dragon's inner core, while the other part wrapped around little white dragon's soul. "I will help you." Fairy Yingzhuo knew that Sun Yunzi was hiding something, so she certainly would not let go of such a good opportunity. With a wave of her hand, another web of spiritual energy also wrapped around little white dragon's soul. "Fellow Taoist, please wait." Sun Yunzi was anxious and transmitted his voice. "Fellow Taoist, have you forgotten that this evil dragon can absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to form an attack?" Fairy Yingzhuo disagreed and snorted coldly. "Your jade talisman can be used, but I can't use my magic weapon." While they were talking, the web had already crossed the web formed by the jade talisman and was much faster. Alas, Sun Yunzi fiercely stamped his foot in the air and said in a strange tone, "I's jade talisman can only control the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, not attack. So it can control the suction force and suck in little white dragon's inner core. In addition, because this jade talisman can control the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, it can also confine the space. Little white dragon's soul cannot escape." A jade talisman made by a spirit-severing cultivator? Confine the space was a magical ability that only spirit-severing cultivators could use. If this spell was not sealed in the jade essence by a spirit-severing cultivator, how could it confine the space? Little white dragon's inner core had already escaped to the edge of the jade talisman's web. But because there was no spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the surroundings, and all the space was confined, it could not absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Therefore, it looked at the thin web and did not dare to collide with it. Under Fairy Yingzhuo's web, little white dragon's inner core flashed a bright light. When the web fell, it immediately turned into pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth and was absorbed by the inner core. With a hoo sound, little white dragon's inner core seemed to have taken a strong elixir and suddenly became bigger. Then, it immediately collided with the jade talisman's web. When it got closer, the inner core suddenly changed its shape. It became an extremely thin and long strip, like a long iron needle, and fiercely pierced into the web. With a puff sound, a thin and tall bulge was pushed out of the web. However, the web was abnormally tough and could not be pierced through. Sun Yunzi sneered in his heart. From his storage bag, he took out a black bracelet made of unknown material and threw it into the air. The black bracelet quietly flew towards little white dragon's inner core. A strong suction force was generated, trying to pull little white dragon's inner core into the bracelet. Soul absorbing ring. At this time, immortal Lu Ni stood up in the air. With a sneer in his eyes, he sent a sound transmission to Sun Yunzi. Fellow Sun Yunzi, could it be that, from the beginning, you wanted this evil dragon's inner core? When? Sun Yunzi flatly denied. This soul-absorbing ring belongs to old man Mo Sang. He would not lend it to others. Fellow Sun Yunzi even took it out. If you did not plan to do so, how could we believe you? Fairy Yingjue also sent a sound transmission with a smile. Although the three Yuaning experts had not obtained little white dragon's inner core and soul essence, they already had a certain disagreement. It was no wonder that little white dragon's inner core could not resist the suction force of the soul-absorbing ring. It was directly sucked into the soul-absorbing ring. When Sun Yunzi and the others saw this, they naturally knew that the soul-absorbing ring was specially designed to deal with soul essences. Little white dragon's inner core would definitely not survive. Therefore, they relaxed their vigilance. Unfortunately, something unexpected happened again. When little white dragon's inner core was forcibly sucked out by the soul-absorbing ring from the net of the jade talisman, little white dragon's inner core paused at first, then gradually flew closer to the soul-absorbing ring. As the distance between the soul-absorbing ring decreased, little white dragon's inner core accelerated. When little white dragon's inner core was about 10 feet away from the soul-absorbing ring, little white dragon's inner core suddenly exerted its strength and rapidly crashed into the soul-absorbing ring. With the two forces superimposed, that speed was almost invisible to the naked eye. Oh no! Although Sun Yunzi was trying to shirk responsibility to Lu Ni Junren and Fairy Yingjue, his divine sense had been paying attention to the soul-absorbing ring. When little white dragon's inner core suddenly accelerated, he was puzzled at first. However, when little white dragon's inner core approached the soul-absorbing ring, it suddenly changed its direction slightly and flew past the soul-absorbing ring. Because little white dragon's inner core was extremely fast, and the force it produced was also incomparable to the suction force of the soul-absorbing ring. Therefore, the soul-absorbing ring was unable to suck in the soul-absorbing ring for a while. Seeing little white dragon's soul essence escape from the soul-absorbing ring, Sun Yunzi immediately formed a seal and wanted to reverse the direction of the soul-absorbing ring. However, the speed of the soul essence was too fast. Before he could reverse the soul-absorbing ring, the soul essence had already shot into the net formed by the jade talisman. This time, it was different from last time. With an extremely fast speed, it produced a great force and pulled the net extremely long. With a light poof, before Sun Yunzi could spit out his life essence again, the soul essence pierced a very small hole in the net formed by the jade talisman. A tiny hole. That was enough. Little white dragon's inner core pierced through the net and rapidly shot into the distance. Quick! Sun Yunzi was alarmed. He stretched out his hand and slapped his forehead. Sun Yunzi's nascent soul also emerged from the top of his head and transformed into a beam of light that chased into the distance. Although the beam of light was much faster than Sun Yunzi and the others' physical bodies, it was still too slow compared to little white dragon's inner core. Sun Yunzi's nascent soul chased for only a dozen or so kilometers before it lost track of little white dragon's inner core. With no other choice, it returned in the direction of Shihua Peak. Just as nascent soul flew to the side of Shihua Peak, it heard a voice. Eldest senior brother, when did our yellow flower ridge have a baby? It was the voice of Shang Huoming's second disciple, Zhang Qingxiao. Where? Did Master go out and pick up another one? Gong Mingwei's voice also sounded. There, Zhang Qingxiao casually pointed. Nascent soul? Gong Mingwei was shocked. What? Nascent soul? Boss, don't scare me. Since when did our Yellow Flower Ridge have a nascent soul senior? Zhang Qingxiao clearly didn't expect to see a nascent soul expert near Xihua Peak. Greetings, senior. Gong Mingwei hurriedly bowed in a panic. Sun Yunzi clearly knew about these two disciples. Sun Yunzi's nascent soul's eyes flashed with ruthlessness as it waved its two small hands towards the sky. Two lightning palms formed in its hands and struck Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao's bodies. The two pitiful people were only at the 11th stage of qi refinement. How could they be a match for Sun Yunzi's nascent soul? Before any thoughts could form in their minds, a burst of intense pain came from their chests. Chapter 1278. The vision of the two turned dark as they fell from Xiao Yuehong's flying boat. One of them landed on a rock on Cherishing Flower Peak and was no longer breathing. The other fell into the cold pond on Cherishing Flower Peak and disappeared without a trace after being hit by the water. They had truly died without a burial ground. After killing the two, Sun Yunzi's nascent soul did not stop at all. When the two were struck by the lightning, Sun Yunzi's nascent soul had already sensed that they had lost their vitality. Immediately, it flew up into the air and entered Sun Yunzi's body. Lu Hong and Fairy Yingzhua had already seen Sun Yunzi's nascent soul kill people. When Sun Yunzi's nascent soul flew back, Lu Hong clapped his hands and said, "Good. Fellow Taoist Sun Yunzi is indeed a good schemer. You've wiped out Shang Huoming's entire sect and captured his sect's guardian spiritual beast. How admirable. Fellow Taoist Lu Hong, you're too kind. You don't need the evil dragon's inner core." Sun Yunzi's face was expressionless, but his eyes were full of sarcasm. "I deserve the most credit for killing the evil dragon, so the inner core is half of eyes." Lu Hong sneered. "As for killing Shang Huoming's descendants, I didn't do anything. Why can't I say anything? Who said I killed Shang Huoming's descendants? Xiao Yuehong's daughter is not in Yellow Flower Ridge, and I didn't intend to kill them either." Sun Yunzi sneered as well. "You've killed the sect leader and two disciples, leaving only a little girl behind. How can Shang Huoming still exist?" Lu Hong smiled faintly. "Fellow Taoist Sun Yunzi, why don't you find the little girl and kill her? You don't have to worry about leaving her in this world. Maybe in the future, when she cultivates a supreme divine ability, she'll come to you for revenge." Sun Yunzi's eyes narrowed, and he sneered, "I was going to find a little girl and kill her, but since fellow Taoist Lu Hong is so enthusiastic, I don't want to hurt her at all. Tonight, there are only 3 of us in Yellow Flower Ridge. Do you think I was afraid of being exposed? Fellow Taoist Lu Hong, I wonder if fellow Taoist Lu Hong has taken a fancy to that little girl's aptitude? Do you want to recruit her into the sect?" "Bah, my 7 Possibilities sect has plenty of people with such unbearable aptitude. Why would I covet her aptitude? Fellow Taoist Sun Yunzi, you'd better hurry up and give the inner core of the evil dragon to I." "Reverend Lu," she said coldly, no longer trying to infuriate Sun Yunzi. Sun Yunzi pondered for a moment and asked, "Of course I'll give you the inner core, but I would like to ask if you're taking the inner core to refine the Python Dragon Pill?" "Strange. What will I do with this inner core? Do I have to tell you, fellow Taoist?" Reverend Lu and I sneered. Sun Yunzi looked at the slightly white sky and turned to ask Fairy Yingzhua, "Where's my friend?" Fairy Yingzhua said calmly, "I naturally want to refine the Python Dragon Pill, but, fellow cultivator, you sent the news too late. In a hurry, I can't prepare all the materials needed to refine the Python Dragon Pill. I'm still thinking whether this inner core can be used for other purposes." "Well, fellow Taoist Yingzhua is right. However, this evil dragon's inner core is the most effective for refining the Python Dragon Pill, and it's also the most useful for us. If it's used to refine other pills, it'll be a waste." Fairy Yingzhua's heart skipped a beat, and she transmitted her voice. "Fellow Taoist Sun Yunzi, what do you mean?" "Haha, it's nothing. I have been paying attention to this evil dragon's movements for a long time, so my preparations are very complete. So, if fellow Taoist Yingzhua is not worried, you can give your inner core to I, and after I refine the Python Dragon Pill, I'll give it to fellow Taoist Yingzhua. What do you think?" "Oh, of course." Fairy Yingzhua was slightly stunned, and after thinking for a while, she asked curiously, "But I don't know. What are your conditions?" Sun Yunzi smiled, but did not agree. He turned to ask Reverend Liu Shi, "Fellow Taoist Liu Kong, what do you think?" Like Fairy Yingzhua, Reverend Liu Shi thought for a while and asked, "Fellow Taoist Sun Yunzi, please tell us your conditions first." "Fellow Taoist Yingzhua, and I will listen to it first." "Haha, it's nothing. I have a few disciples who practice body refining, and they need the blood and flesh of this evil dragon. So, I want to bring the blood and flesh of this evil dragon back to the Shanghua sect and use it as the price for refining the Python Dragon Pill for you too. What do you think?" Reverend Liu, she turned to look at Fairy Yingzhua, and he was a little puzzled. Although the blood and flesh of this little white dragon had passed through the Thunder Tribulation and was a precious material for refining pills, refining weapons, and even body refining, it had too few uses. Compared with the inner core of this little white dragon, it was really insignificant. He did not know why Sun Yunzi was interested in the blood and flesh of this little white dragon. Of course, he knew that even if he asked, Sun Yunzi would not explain. So he had to say awkwardly, "Fellow Taoist Sun Yunzi's request is really difficult for I. I originally wanted to take advantage of you too." Hearing this, Sun Yunzi was so angry that his lungs were about to explode, and he cursed in his heart. He knew that if he did not mention it, Reverend Liu Shi might not mention it, but he wanted to find the trace of the dragon transformation skill from this blood and flesh, so it was impossible for him not to mention it. He did not believe that the essence of the little white dragon could take away the item that recorded the dragon transformation skill. However, Sun Yunzi's face did not have any color, and he only smiled insincerely and said, "Oh, since fellow Taoist Liu Kong is also interested in this useless blood and flesh, then fine, I will not rob you. Fellow Taoist Liu, she can take half of this evil dragon's inner core, and I will take the rest. When I refine the Python Dragon Pill, I will give a share to fellow Taoist Yingzhua. As for the blood and flesh of this Python Dragon, just divide it into 3 parts, and each of us will have one." Hearing this, Reverend Liu, she rolled his eyes and hesitated. "Well, you two fellow Taoists don't need to argue." Fairy Yingzhua knew that it was time for her to speak, so she said with a smile, "I have never seen the blood and flesh of an evil dragon that has gone through the Thunder Tribulation. In my opinion, why don't we let fellow Taoist Sun Yunzi choose first, and when he has taken enough, I and fellow Taoist Liu Kong can take some of the rest. What do you think?" "Fellow Taoist Liu Kong? Well, very good. My sect also needs to strengthen the training of body refining disciples, so I have to take some of this blood and flesh." Reverend Liu Shi laughed, and his face was full of embarrassment. "Well, since both of you need it, how can I not fulfill your wish?" Sun Yunzi laughed. He pointed his finger, and the jade talisman with the inner core of the little white dragon in it flew over. Sun Yunzi put the inner core into a jade bottle and pasted a yellow talisman on it. Then he took out an alms bowl-like object from his storage bag. He raised his hand, and it flew into the air. Puff! He spat a mouthful of air on the alms bowl. The alms bowl flashed with a misty brilliance and suddenly expanded. Quick! Sun Yunzi cast a spell, and the mouth of the alms bowl pointed downwards, emitting a white brilliance from its mouth. "Go!" Sun Yunzi shouted again. The alms bowl emitted a white light and flew up from the summit of Cherishing Flower Peak. In just a moment, the blood and flesh of the little white dragon were all sucked into the alms bowl. Reverend Liu, she looked at Fairy Yingzhua, and both of them had some understanding in their eyes. Reverend Liu Shi secretly transmitted his voice. Fellow Taoist, Ingzhua, this Sun Yunzi took out the soul-absorbing ring and the immemorial bowl, so it must be not simple. Fellow Taoist, have you noticed anything? I also felt that something was not right, but Sun Yunzi did not reveal any flaws, which made I puzzled. Fairy Ingzhua also felt helpless. Not long after, Sun Yunzi collected all of the little white dragon's blood and flesh. He pointed his finger at the immemorial bowl, and it flew back to his hand. After holding in his hand, Sun Yunzi said with a smile, "Fellow Taoists, do you have any suitable magic treasures to store it?" "Oomph." Reverend Liu Shi shook his hand, and a small storage bag flew out. "Just put it here." "Okay." Sun Yunzi pointed his finger, and several pieces of blood and flesh flew out from the immemorial bowl and were put into the storage bag by Reverend Liu Shi. "Fellow Taoist Lu Kong, do you still want it?" Sun Yunzi looked at Reverend Liu Shi and asked. Reverend Liu Shi used his divine sense to check the storage bag, but found nothing unusual and shook his head slightly. "Then, I thank fellow Taoist Lu Kong," Sun Yunzi said with a smile, and gave some of the blood and flesh to Fairy Ingzhua, and then put away the immemorial bowl. Sun Yunzi raised his eyes to look at Dongfang Yuxiao, and cupped his hands at them, saying with a smile, "I thank you for your help last night. As for the Python Dragon pills, when I collect them, I'll send a message to you and give you your share." "Okay, then we'll have to trouble you." Fellow Taoist Sun Yunzi, Reverend Liu Shi, and Fairy Ingzhua cupped their hands in return. After saluting, Sun Yunzi made a hand seal, and his figure turned into a rainbow and flew away. Reverend Liu Shi and Fairy Ingzhua looked at each other and also flew away. Only the blood-stained Xihua Peak was left, and it became brighter and brighter under the sunlight. After the meal, in midair, the space shook for a while, and a figure gradually showed up. It was Sun Yunzi, who was frowning in anger. Sun Yunzi showed up and took off a 3-finger-wide, palm-length talisman from his body and carefully put it into his storage bag. He released his divine sense and looked in the direction where Reverend Liu Shi and Fairy Ingzhua left. He gave a cold snort and then set his eyes on Xihua Peak. Sun Yunzi's spiritual sense followed his gaze and carefully searched Cherishing Flower Peak, Mincy Peak, and other places. After a full 2 hours, Sun Yunzi still did not find the dragonization art that he was looking for. Strange, there is no dragonization art in the evil dragon's flesh and blood, and its soul essence cannot be taken away. Could it be this poor Taoist misjudged? This evil dragon doesn't practice the dragonization skill? That's possible. The dragonization skill is the supreme skill of demon beasts. How could it appear in my Dawn Rain continent, or in a small school in this deviated place? But if it's not the dragonization skill, then how do you explain the various abnormalities of the evil dragon? Sun Yunzi thought for a while, but he still couldn't figure it out, and his face became darker and darker. Thinking that he gave up the Python Dragon Core for the dragonization skill, Sun Yunzi's anger came from nowhere. "Kacha! Kacha!" Several loud sounds were heard. Sun Yunzi stretched out his left and right hands, and several thunder palms hit the peak of Xihua Peak. Rumble! The power of the thunder palms was so great that the entire Xihua Peak collapsed. Xiaohua's charred corpse was also crushed under the rubble. Chapter 1279. Damn it! Sun Yunzi shouted angrily. He took out the palm-sized talisman from his storage bag and used his magic to stick it on his body. Sun Yunzi's body immediately disappeared. Only a gust of wind could be heard. Sun Yunzi must have gone far away. A long while later, Reverend Liu Shi and Fairy Ingzhua showed up separately. Both of them frowned and looked at the messy Xihua Peak, then used their spirit powers to scan Xihua Peak and the other peaks. Only then did they leave empty-handed, just like Sun Yunzi. On Xihua Peak, at the bottom of the pile of rubble, Xiaohua's charcoal-like body was motionless. There was no sign of life at all. He was no different from a corpse. However, in the space behind Xiao Hua's head, there was a change that Sun Yunzi and others couldn't even dream of. In that space, the light source of the cube stopped there quietly. It didn't rotate like before. Above the light source, in the distance, there was a sky canopy like the night sky. In that sky canopy, there were countless stars. They were all flickering. These stars weren't static. Instead, they were slowly rotating along one or several indescribable, obscure, and mysterious trajectories. It seemed that this rotation had existed since ancient times. It also seemed that this trajectory had existed long before this space was formed. This was the heavenly Tao starry sky that was driven by the heavenly Tao contained in Little White Dragon's thunder tribulation. Compared to before, the heavenly Tao's rotation was obviously much slower. However, in the slowness, the traces of the heavenly Tao became more obvious. All kinds of subtle details were gradually revealed. The heavenly Tao's chaotic, mellow, and ubiquitous characteristics were undoubtedly revealed. Under the heavenly Tao, although the light source of the cube was stagnant, a golden shadow was projected from the light source. It looked like a human, but not a human. That shadow stood in the space. It was unknown whether it was a hand or a foot. It was inexplicably gesturing there. This gesture seemed to be a fist or a foot. It also seemed to be a magic art. Every time it moved, a red brilliance was transmitted from one part of the shadow's hand and foot to another part. When the shadow stood still, that brilliance just happened to pass through the shadow's hand and foot. The golden light of the shadow also slightly swelled, seemingly sending out a kind of fluctuation. Then, the shadow moved again. This time, it made a different movement. An orange brilliance appeared. It was still transmitted through the shadow's hand and foot along with the shadow's movements. When the shadow stopped, it transmitted through the entire hand and foot. The golden light of the shadow also changed into another kind of fluctuation. This process was repeated 7 times. The brilliance turned from red to orange, then yellow, green, cyan, blue, and finally purple. Every time it changed color, the fluctuation of the golden light would also change. When the purple brilliance passed through the shadow's hands and feet, the shadow was no longer golden. Instead, it was red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. The colors were constantly changing, and as the colors changed, the shadow's wave also changed. In the end, the shadow turned black, and the wave of the shadow became extremely strange. But at the same time, a pure white dot appeared somewhere in the shadow. The white dot spread extremely quickly, and in the blink of an eye, the shadow turned white, almost transparent. The shadow's fluctuations also became very familiar. Suddenly, a ray of light shot out from the cube's light source. The white shadow swayed slightly and actually melted into the ray of light and disappeared. Xiaohua's consciousness seemed to exist, yet it also seemed to not exist. It seemed to remain within this space, yet it also seemed to be the entire space. In short, Xiaohua's consciousness was clear about the changes in the entire space. Light escape. This is actually light escape, using light as an escape technique. This is really unimaginable. Xiaohua's consciousness did not have any form. It seemed to be a small dot in this space, yet it also seemed like the entire space was Xiaohua. But this was not the main point. The main point was that no matter what form it took, it could not stop him from thinking. I've only heard of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth escape techniques. How'd I know about this? Could it be? Xiaohua's consciousness swept across the still light source in the space, which was like a blazing sun. This thing is actually called tracing light. Not only did the golden shadow shoot out from this tracing light, it seemed like a lot of things had rushed out from this tracing light. The reason why I know about the 5 elements escape technique was also because it was transmitted from inside just now. Could it be my memories from the past 10 years were all hidden inside this tracing light? This is strange. This tracing light clearly has nothing to do with me. How do my memories run inside? Furthermore, if you gave it to me, then just give it to me. Why did you give me some vague and incomplete things? You only said light escape technique. You only told me that I had to first cultivate the 5 elements escape technique and use different fist techniques or body refining techniques as the foundation of the 5 elements escape technique to temper my bones. Only then can I cultivate the light escape technique by refining the 7 colors of my bones. Oh, that's right. It seems like in the bone refining 7 colors, every time the color changes, the fluctuation changes. It has to be guided by the 5 elements origin. Where are these 5 elements origin? Where did this tracing light come from? Where did this space in my mind come from? Also, the starry sky above this tracing light looks very familiar. They didn't seem to exist before. How did they appear? Xiaohua's consciousness had already started to become confused. There were really too many secrets that he did not know. However, he immediately thought, my cultivation is low and I don't have any ability to protect myself. The only sure kill skill I can rely on is to use force to break through. And this requires close combat. Since I have to get close, speed is the most important thing. This light escape technique, if I can cultivate it successfully, my speed will be extremely fast and I will be able to kill with one strike. Even if I can't succeed, I can still escape far away and there will be no need to worry about my life. In cultivating this light escape technique should be the most important thing. This incomplete snake-shaped ring. Why is there something else? Xiaohua's consciousness noticed that within the space, the snake-shaped ring that he had always been unable to figure out its origin had already been mended. It was a swaying dragon tail. At first glance, it was somewhat similar to the tail of the deity in Shanghua, Ming's inheritance palace. Just as Xiaohua's consciousness noticed that snake-shaped ring, an inexplicable handwriting and symbols came out from that ring and entered Xiaohua's consciousness. Dragon transformation art? What's this thing? Xiaohua's consciousness was slightly startled. It seemed that his entire consciousness had been occupied by the dragon transformation art. Xiaohua's consciousness did not dare to be negligent. Just like how he usually comprehended the art, the entire space became still as he carefully comprehended the thing that was transmitted to him. Just like this, the space in Xiaohua's mind was completely silent. Tracing light was also still stagnant. Only that golden figure repeated its previous actions over and over again. The colors on its body also changed one after another until finally it slowly disappeared and was absorbed into the tracing light. Time passed very quickly and also very slowly. After an unknown amount of time, the tracing light's brilliance flashed and the fluctuations reappeared. Then it started to rotate again. Only this time, the rotation was different from before. It actually followed the trajectory of the heavenly Tao in the starry sky. It was even more profound and obscure. On Cherishing Flower Peak, the sun was still shining. However, under the sprinkling of the sunlight, the peak's peak was filled with gravel. It had long lost its previous beauty and variety. The gravel had been piled up for many days without any signs of movement. At this time, the gravel suddenly moved. First, it slightly protruded and then fell down. Then, that protrusion rose again. The gravel around the protrusion rolled to the side, creating a series of noises. After a few repetitions, that protrusion suddenly rushed up. The gravel crashed and rolled in all directions, creating an extremely loud noise. What followed that protrusion was an extremely black human figure. The human figure landed on the gravel. Under the sunlight, one could see that it was completely charred black from head to toe. With a light ka sound, just as that human figure landed on the gravel, the mountain wind blew. A crack appeared on that human figure's charred skin. Soon after, more and more cracks appeared. Ka-ka, sounds were incessant. When the sound stopped, a gust of wind blew. Pieces of thin, charred black fragments fell from the human figure's body. What flowed out was a white smooth. Xiaohua first looked around in confusion. When the fragments fell to the ground and the mountain wind hit his body, he came to his senses. With a swipe of his left hand, He took out a Taoist robe from the space and quickly put it on. As he passed it around, he muttered, "Fortunately, this young master's moral quality is good. I've already prepared a Taoist robe. Otherwise, I don't know which girl would have benefited from this robe." Just as his voice fell, Xiao Hua's expression immediately became strange. He quickly covered his mouth with his hand. His eyes spun around as he thought, what's wrong with me? How can I casually say this? In this yellow flower ridge, other than senior sister, what other girls are there? If this was heard by second senior brother, wouldn't I be in trouble? While thinking, he unconsciously patted his forehead with his hand. Where's my hair? Why is this young master's hair gone again? Xiao Hua howled in grief. At the same time, he muttered in his heart, why is it gone again? Could it be that it also happened before? After putting on the Taoist robe properly, Xiao Hua continued to look at the mess in front of him. Is this still Xihua Peak? How did the peak of the mountain become like this? Xiao Hua jumped down from the pile of rubble and looked at the dark brown mountain rocks under his feet. There were obviously some bloodstains. When he looked to the side, there were even more. This could be Little White's bloodstains? Xiao Hua was stunned. He recalled the matter of him fainting. Little White? Little White is actually a dragon? Xiao Hua frowned. Dragon transformation art. Could it be related to Little White? That's right. Was Little White undergoing the lightning tribulation last night? Were these bloodstains left behind by Little White? Little White, did it pass the lightning tribulation? Xiao Hua felt a burst of worry in his heart. He thought for a moment and secretly said in his heart, I'd better go and ask the sect master. The commotion last night was so big. How could the sect master not know? There are more and more things in my mind. Should I tell the sect master? Xiao Hua's heart was perturbed. He thought about the light evasion art and the dragon transformation art as he flew towards Mint's worship peak. That brat you. Who are you? Suddenly, a voice came from midair. Chapter 1280. Just as Xiao Hua was immersed in his thoughts, struggling with the dilemma of whether to tell the sect leader or not, he suddenly heard someone shouting in the air not far away. You brat, who are you? Xiao Hua was slightly taken aback. After hearing this, he very naturally replied, Me? Of course it's Xiao. Before the name Xiao Hua could leave his mouth, Xiao Hua came to his senses and almost jumped up in the air. He stretched out his arm and pointed at the 2 fifth-layer qi refining cultivators flying over. This is my Shanghua Underworld's territory. Who do you think you are? He scolded. What qualifications do you have to ask for my I's name? But then, Xiao Hua's eyes turned, and he somewhat came to his senses. He lowered his voice and cupped his hands, saying, Fellow Taoists, could it be that you've come to Shanghua Ming to pay a visit to my sect master? Shanghua Ming? Sect master? The 2 cultivators were stunned. They glanced at each other in amazement. Then vigilance appeared on their faces. One of them stretched out his hand and took out a summoning talisman from his bosom. With a burst of magic power, the summoning talisman flew away. The other person laughed disdainfully, saying, A second-layer qi refining junior dares to loot a burning house at Yellow Flower Ridge? Don't tell me you don't want to live anymore. Then he said to the person next to him, Is there a need to send a message for this kind of thing? Just directly kill him. The young sect master has ordered that all abnormalities should be reported. Junior martial brother, don't make a mistake. That person didn't agree, but his movements weren't slow either. He unfolded the yellow talisman in his hand and swiftly flew towards Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was furious. This was his Shanghua Ming's territory. Others actually said he came to loot a burning house. How could he tolerate this kind of thing? With a wave of his hand, he also took out a fireball talisman. However, just as he was about to activate the flying talisman to attack, his heart suddenly stirred. Young sect master? Then he looked again. Of course, these 2 people were dressed in 100 Herbs sex attire. They were the same people he saw at Medicine Farmer Peak. Your 100 Herbs sex disciples? Where is Jiang Fan? Why are you showing off in my Shanghua Ming's territory? Xiao Hua stopped and gripped the fireball talisman in his hand. He coldly stared at the two fifth-level Qi refining disciples who were flying much slower than him. You also know that Yellow Flower Ridge is now the territory of my 100 Herbs sect? Now, you know the name of our young master? The 200 Herbs Gate disciples sneered. Since you know, you still want to take advantage of the situation? Isn't it too late to find out now? Yellow Flower Ridge is now your 100 Herbs Gate's territory. When Xiao Hua heard this, he became anxious and immediately asked, "Where is my Shanghuaming's Gate Master? Where are my eldest senior brother, second senior brother, and senior sister?" Oh, that's right. Didn't my senior sister accept the invitation of your 100 Herbs Gates, young Master Jiang, and go to your medicinal farmer peak? My eldest senior brother and second senior brother went to send him off, and they haven't returned since last night. I understand now. Your 100 Herbs Gate actually plotted to kill my senior brother and senior sister, and then killed your way into my Yellow Flower Ridge? When he thought of this, Xiao Hua's face became as cold as ice. However, he didn't use the fireball talisman. Since 100 Herbs Gate had already taken over this place, they definitely had more disciples than these two. If he attacked, he'd have to wait until he had the confidence to escape. You're really Shang Huaming's disciple? The 100 Herbs Gate disciple was also stunned, his face full of shock. But I heard the young master say that Shang Huaming's Gate Master and two of his disciples have already died. He didn't say there were any survivors. Gate Master and senior brothers, they're already gone? When Xiao Hua heard that the Gate Master and two of his senior brothers had already died, his heart was filled with grief. Just now, he had made the most extreme guess, but he never thought that 3 living people would completely disappear in a single night. When he heard this, his body unconsciously swayed in the air, and the Gate Master's generosity and his 2 senior brothers' closeness immediately appeared before his eyes. 3 years of happiness with Shang Huaming flashed before his eyes like a merry-go-round, and Xiao Hua unconsciously bit his lips tightly. Seeing Xiao Hua so sad, the 100 Herbs Gate disciple was even more convinced. After hesitating for a moment, he probed, "Little brother, don't be sad, Fairy Xiao is still alive." Senior sister is still alive? Hearing that his senior sister was actually still alive, Xiao Hua was pleasantly surprised and hurriedly said, "Senior brothers, please." At this point, Xiao Hua's heart trembled. "I, Shang Huaming, am weak and only have 5 people. The Gate Master and 2 of my senior brothers have all died, so I, Shang Huaming, can be considered to have been destroyed. I'm the only one left in the Gate Master. No, I haven't been accepted into Shang Huaming's sect, so I can't be considered his disciple. To be honest, Shang Huaming only has senior sister as his only descendant. First of all, senior sister has some feelings for the 100 Herbs Gate's young master. After Shang Huaming was destroyed, she was all alone and had no one to rely on. Who knows, she might walk together with Jiang Fan. Besides, the 100 Herbs Gate came in large numbers. Needless to say, they're definitely using the banner of my Shang Huaming's alliance to occupy Yellow Flower Ridge. Just based on this, senior sister's life is in danger. Thinking about his experience from Yellow Flower Ridge to Medicine Gnome Peak, Xiao Hua shuddered a little. Then he thought of Shang Huaming's inexplicable disaster falling from the sky and had a deeper understanding of the life and death struggle in the cultivation world. After some thought, he made a plan in his heart. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, "I wonder when senior sister Xiao will return from Medicine Gnome Peak to Yellow Flower Ridge." Fairy Xiao returned more than a month ago. The 100 Herbs Gate disciples were almost certain that Xiao Hua was Shang Huaming's disciple. Besides, he was only in the 2nd layer of the aura refining realm, so the 2 5th-layer aura refining disciples didn't take him seriously at all. They casually said, "It was our young master who sent Fairy Xiao back. It was precisely because young master encountered this matter that the Gate Master sent Elder Xing to bring us here. To help?" The disciple looked at Xiao Hua and actually changed the last 2 words to help, causing Xiao Hua to feel a burst of disgust. More than a month ago, Xiao Hua felt disgust, but he didn't feel surprised. In his memory, he had fallen into a coma because he encountered Little White's tribulation last night. He thought he was only unconscious for one night, but he didn't expect it to be for 30 days. That's right, Junior Brother. Our 100 Herbs Gate has already been in Yellow Flower Ridge for dozens of days and searched this place for a long time, but we didn't find any traces of living people. Junior Brother, where did you go? 100 Herbs Gate disciple asked. This. Xiao Hua hesitated slightly. Just as he was about to speak, he saw several figures rapidly flying over from the direction of Mindless Worship Peak. Before the person in the lead arrived, a rough voice sounded. Where did this brat come from? Don't you know how powerful our 100 Herbs Gate is? When the crowd flew closer, they saw a pale, young man, and his cultivation was pitifully low. They couldn't help but be stunned. It's this person, Martial Uncle. This person says he's Shang Huoming's disciple. One of the 100 Herbs Gate disciples said in a low voice. How is that possible? Aside from Xiao Xianrui, all of Shang Huoming's people are already dead. The rough voice belonged to a dark-skinned man about 40 years old. He waved his hand in disbelief. At this moment, a disciple behind this person flew a few steps forward and whispered a few words in his ear. Xiao Hua looked. This disciple seemed to be the one who gave him the withered seed. Is that so? Are you sure? Martial Uncle Xing, who was at the 11th level of Qi refining, glared at the disciple. The disciple was clearly stunned and stammered. This disciple saw him at Medicine Farmer Peak, but I can't be sure. Xiao Hua's heart thumped, and his eyes began to scan his surroundings. He believed that if this Martial Uncle Xing had any ill intentions towards him, he should be able to escape with his speed. With his understanding of the terrain of Yellow Flower Ridge, he should be able to escape with his life. However, in his heart, he still wanted to see Xiao Xianrui again. He wanted to see if this unfortunate senior sister of his was still alive. Seeing that the disciple's tone had changed, Martial Uncle Xing's eyes narrowed. However, when he saw that Xiao Hua was only at the 2nd level of Qi refining, he frowned and looked at him for a while, as if thinking about something. Xiao Hua's heartstrings were taut. He was just waiting for him to make any strange movements and escape. Martial Uncle Xing sighed softly in his heart, waved his hand, and said to the disciple next to him, since he's Shang Huoming's disciple, take him to the young master. At this moment, the young master is accompanying Xiao Xianrui at the back mountain of Mindless Worship Peak. The disciple who had spoken just now glanced at Martial Uncle Xing and cupped his hands. This disciple obeys. Then, he flew in front of Xiao Hua and said coldly, Let's go, follow me. Xiao Hua's heart chilled. He had already cursed the 100 Herbs Gate in his heart. This is the back mountain of Mindless Worship Peak. Do I need you to lead the way? However, he still smiled and cupped his hands. Thank you for your trouble, senior brother. The disciple glanced at him again and seemed to be very dissatisfied with the way he was addressed. However, in front of everyone, he didn't say anything and flew away. Xiao Hua cupped his hands at Martial Uncle Xing and the others, then slowed down. Like a 2nd level Qi refining disciple, he slowly flew towards Mindless Worship Peak. The place that the disciple was leading him to was none other than Shang Huoming's secret chamber. At this moment, the door to the secret chamber was wide open, and a yellow talisman was stuck in front of the cave, allowing anyone to enter. The disciple flew to the cave and cupped his hands. Reporting to the young master, Shang Huoming found a living disciple. A cry of surprise came from inside the cave. It was Xiao Xianrui's voice. Is it Xiao Hua? The first voice was still in the cave, but when the last word came out, Xiao Xianrui had already rushed out of the secret chamber. Senior sister, Xiao Hua's eyes were filled with tears as he also rushed over. Xiao Xianrui's footsteps were somewhat staggered. She didn't look like a cultivator at all. As soon as she saw Xiao Hua's tall and thin figure and familiar face, she couldn't help but throw herself at him. She had just called out Xiao Hua. When sorrow arose from her heart, and she couldn't help but wail loudly. She threw herself into the arms of her only family member in this world. Xiaohua was very tall, half a head taller than Gong Mingwei. Xiao Xianrui threw herself into his arms, but she could only touch his chest. Xiao Xianrui cried extremely sorrowfully. Her tears flowed out like spring water, and in a moment, the front of Xiao Hua's Taoist robe was completely soaked. Chapter 1281. Xiao Hua originally thought that he was strong. When he heard the news of Xiao Yuehong, Gong Mingwei, and Zhang Qingxiao, he wasn't too sad. But now that Xiao Xianrui was crying, he couldn't help it. His tears fell on Xiao Xianrui's hair. In the midst of his tears, Xiao Hua suddenly felt a cold air coming from the front. He was slightly stunned and glanced slightly. Wasn't the young master of Baichao Gate, Jiang Fan? Xiao Hua thought to himself. Xiao Xianrui was Jiang Fan's sweetheart. At this time, she was crying in his arms. What was this? Although he was Xiao Xianrui's junior brother and was much younger than Xiao Xianrui, but after all, they weren't related by blood. Xiao Hua's body couldn't help but stiffen, perhaps because she had cried enough. Xiao Xianrui's soft body seemed to feel Xiao Hua's stiffness and also moved slightly. Xiao Hua barely held back his tears. When he was about to find an excuse, Jiang Fan in front of him said gently, "Sister Rui, cry a little longer. In these dozens of days, except for the first cry, you haven't shed a single tear. I know you've been holding back your grief in your heart and don't want me to see it. Xiao Hua is back, and you're not the only one left from Shanghuoming. You could be considered to have a companion. Cry, cry happily." Brother Fan, hearing this, Xiao Xianrui seemed to be extremely moved. She pushed Xiao Hua away, turned around, and threw herself into Jiang Fan's arms and cried. Xiao Hua looked at her and felt extremely uncomfortable. The mountain wind blew, and the tears on Xiao Hua's chest turned from warm to cold. It was so cold that it reached his heart. But soon, the tears were blown away by the mountain wind, and there were no traces left. After a while, Xiao Hua wiped away the tears in his eyes. He looked up at Jiang Fan, who was holding Xiao Xianrui's waist with one hand and stroking her hair with the other. He smiled and nodded slightly. At this time, Jiang Fan was as handsome as jade, and his eyes were also kind. He also nodded at Xiao Hua. Xiao Xianrui's crying gradually stopped. She struggled out of Jiang Fan's arms and said in a low voice, "Brother Fan, I let you see a joke." "Of course not. To let you cry out all your grief and not turn this tribulation into your heart's demon. This is what I should do. Brother Fan, you're the best." Xiao Xianrui's eyes were filled with gratitude as she forced a smile. "I'm sorry for your loss, Sister Rui. What's done is done. It's useless to think too much about it." Jiang Fan patted Xiao Xianrui's shoulder and said sadly, "I know," Xiao Xianrui said and turned her head. It wasn't until now that Xiao Hua carefully looked at Xiao Xianrui's face. He saw that in just a month's time, Xiao Xianrui's round face had lost a lot of weight, almost becoming an oval face. She was originally rich, but now she was even more beautiful and poignant. Perhaps it was because she had lost weight, but Xiao Xianrui's eyes had instead become a bit bigger. Her fine black hair was coiled up on her head, and a white flower was slanted into her sideburns. Xiao Hua knew that his senior sister had always liked red, and at this moment, her whole body was covered in white. At first glance, she looked extremely elegant, and even more refreshing than before. Senior sister, sect master, Without waiting for Xiao Xianrui to speak, Xiao Hua asked first. "Alas, come in." Xiao Xianrui's face darkened as she walked into the secret room. "Xiao Hua, where have you been for the past 1 month? We searched the entire Yellow Flower Ridge, but couldn't find any trace of you." Without waiting for Xiao Hua to walk, Jiang Fan asked with a smile, his tone full of concern. "Alas, where else could I have gone?" Sect Master said that Junior didn't have enough black tuber grass from young Sect Master Jiang. After Big Senior Brother and Second Senior Brother sent Senior Sister out, Junior was sent to the depths of Yellow Flower Ridge to search for black tubergrass. Young Sect Master knows Junior's cultivation level. There are many ferocious beasts in the depths of Yellow Flower Ridge. Junior didn't dare to go too fast and could only search carefully. That's why I was delayed, Xiao Hua said with a smile. What about the black tubergrass? Zhang Fan asked again. Young Sect Master, if the black tubergrass was so easy to pick, Junior wouldn't need to go to Yaonong Peak to look for Young Sect Master. Because Junior didn't manage to pick it, Junior kept delaying and only returned now. Oh, right. Junior planted some of the black tubergrass that Young Sect Master gave Junior in Shihua Peak's medicine garden. However, Junior's level of planting medicine is limited, so Junior didn't live much. Jiang Fan was skeptical. Looking at Xiao Hua's bald head, he asked curiously, "What's wrong with your hair? It wasn't like this when you were at Yaonong Peak." Xiao Hua's heart thumped, and he smiled apologetically. Sigh. This Junior was accompanying Sect Master to concoct pills when I accidentally dozed off and was burned by the earth fire. Even though Sect Master heard the news and rushed over, it was still a lot less, so this Junior might as well cut it all off. Oh, Senior Sister knows about this. Senior Sister didn't tell Young Sect Master. That day, Second Senior Brother laughed at Junior a lot. Speaking of Second Senior Brother, Xiao Hua's voice became lower and lower. Xiao Xinrui was leading the way. When she heard Jiang Fan's question, she first stopped, her face expressionless. When she heard Xiao Hua mention her, she just noticed that Xiao Hua was different. Hearing Xiao Hua mention her, she clenched her teeth and scolded. A boy refining pills fell asleep while guarding the pill furnace, and you still have the nerve to mention it? How could I mention this to others? Yes, Senior Sister is right. Seeing Xiao Xinrui help him cover up his lie, Xiao Hua hurriedly said. Jiang Fan frowned slightly, but his face showed that he believed it. After all, the disciples sent by 100 Herbs Gate were arranged around the Great Array, and there weren't many disciples in the depths of Yellow Flower Ridge. If Xiao Hua came from there, it was normal that he wasn't discovered. Go, Sect Master Xiao and Senior Brother Gong's remains are inside. Jiang Fan sighed and waved his hand. Huh, only the remains of 2 people? Xiao Hua was surprised, but he didn't dare to ask more. When they entered the secret chamber, they saw that it was empty. There were only 3 jade coffins placed on a platform that was half the height of a person. The jade was transparent, and Xiao Hua saw Xiao Yuehong's pale and familiar face in the middle coffin. Xiao Yuehong was wearing a navy blue Taoist robe, and his eyes were closed as if he was sleeping soundly. However, there were faintly visible cracks on his face, and some parts of his face were missing. Indeed, Xiao Yuehong's death was very tragic. Looking at the left side of Xiao Yuehong's coffin, Gong Mingwei was lying there quietly, and he also looked like he was sleeping soundly. There were no fatal wounds. The rightmost coffin was empty, and there was only a Taoist robe inside, Sect Master. Although Xiao Hua tried to suppress his emotions, he couldn't help but feel sad when he saw that peaceful face. He quickly stepped forward, knelt on the ground, and kowtowed. After he finished kowtowing to the 3 coffins, he pointed to Zhang Qingxiao's empty coffin, turned his head, and asked Second Senior Brother's remains, Xiao Hua. Xiao Xinrui's eyes were filled with tears again. She opened her mouth and called out, Brother Fan, please tell Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua, a month ago, after Senior Brother Gong and Senior Brother Zhang sent your Senior Sister to my Medicine Farmer Peak, they didn't stay in my 100 Herbs Gate for long and immediately returned to Yellow Flower Ridge. And after Sister Rui played in my Medicine Farmer Peak for 2 days, she was sent back to Yellow Flower Ridge by me and my disciples. When we arrived at Yellow Flower Ridge that day, your Shang Huaming's formation didn't have any abnormalities, but Sister Rui's message talisman didn't fly out. We were surprised and followed her into Shang Huaming's formation. There were also no abnormalities at Wanxi Peak, but we couldn't find Sect Master Xiao and the others. In the end, we found Senior Brother Gong's remains near the left side of Cherishing Flower Peak, as well as the destroyed flying boat. Then, we found Senior Brother Zhang's torn and blood-stained Taoist robe next to the cold pond. Although Senior Brother Zhang's remains haven't been found after such a long time, I'm afraid that he fell into the cold pond and was washed away by the water. Then, second Senior Brother may not have fallen. Xiaohua had a glimmer of hope in his heart. Xiaohua, I also hope that Senior Brother Zhang is alive, but he was with Senior Brother Gong, and the flying boat was destroyed. Moreover, Senior Brother Gong's body was killed by an extremely powerful person with a high-level magic art. Do you think Senior Brother Zhang could have escaped? Zhang Fan said bitterly. Xiaohua was silent. In his heart, he also knew that to be able to kill Xiao Yuehong and even the little white dragon, this divine ability was absolutely not something that Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao could contend against. Although he couldn't see Zhang Qingxiao's corpse, she was definitely dead. After taking a look at Xiaohua, Zhang Fan then points at Xiao Yuehong's remains and says, after Senior Marshal Brother Gong's remains were found, we never found sect leader Zhao's remains. It wasn't until in the end, in the mountain stream between Cherishing Flower Peak and Lone Staff Peak, that we found some fragments and pieces of clothing that were scattered there. I asked the Sex Foundation establishment elders to cast a spell, and only then was we able to collect sect leader Zhao's scattered remains and piece them together like this. Father, hearing this, Xiao Xinrui couldn't help crying again. Xiaohua's tears fell down with a pitter-patter sound. After waiting for Xiao Xinrui to stop crying, Zhang Fan said, Sister Rui, this is good. You're not the only one in Shanghuaming. With Xiaohua, you and him can support each other. With the support of our 100 Herbs Gate, Shanghuaming will have a chance to rise again in the future. Thinking of the actions of the 100 Herbs Gate's disciples just now, Xiaohua's heart was like a mirror. If it weren't for his low cultivation level, which was only at the second level of qi refining, he wouldn't have been able to cause any big waves. Maybe Marshal Uncle Xing would have already killed him. Then, Shanghuaming wouldn't have any disciples to meet with Xiao Xinrui and ignite Xiao Xinrui's idea of reviving Shanghuaming. Alas, Brother Fan, this you've said it before. I've already said it many times. I, Shanghuaming, have already perished. There's no need to talk about reviving. And Xiaohua, presumably, Brother Fan also knows that although I call him Junior Brother, he's not the same as eldest Senior Brother and second Senior Brother. Father, he has never accepted Xiaohua as a disciple of Shanghuaming. How can he be qualified to revive Shanghuaming? If he revives the Shanghuaming, wouldn't it become a big joke in our country of Xi? Chapter 1282. I see. Zhang Fan was still concerned. This is Shanghuaming's internal affairs. I'd better not get involved. I'll listen to you. Xiao Xinrui shook her head slightly. When I opened Shanghuaming's inheritance palace, I entrusted Shanghuaming to Brother Fan. Whether Shanghuaming stays or not, I'll listen to Brother Fan. In fact, in my opinion, Shanghuaming and 100 Herbs Gate are allies. 100 Herbs Gate has a legitimate reason to occupy Shanghuaming. As a disciple of Shanghuaming, I have no objections. What trouble can others cause? When Xiaohua heard this, he suddenly realized that he had been worried about Xiao Xinrui's safety just now. Now he knew that there must be many sects coveting Shanghuaming's death. Of course, the 10,000 Poisons sect, which had attacked Shanghuaming before, was one of them. However, the 100 Herbs sect was one step ahead of them and got Xiao Xinrui's approval, so it was justified. Although the strength was respected in the cultivation world, in the case of the same strength, of course, the status should be given. The 100 Herbs sect had Xiao Xinrui in their hands, which meant that they had taken the initiative to protect Xiao Xinrui. Of course, as for the future, when the cultivation world of Xi forgot about Shanghuaming, it was not something they could consider now. At the same time, Xiaohua also understood that this was not only said to Zhang Fan, but more importantly, Xiao Xinrui said it to Xiaohua. Sure enough, Xiao Xinrui turned to Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, although Father wanted to take you as a disciple of Shanghuaming that day, Your cultivation couldn't enter the third level of qi refining. Father wanted to, but he couldn't do it properly. He couldn't break the rules of cultivation in qi, so you can't be considered a disciple of Shang Huoming. Now that Shang Huoming is no longer here, you don't have to use my identity as a disciple to cultivate. Then, he turned to Zhang Fan and said, Brother Fan, Xiaohua's aptitude is really bad. You should take into account that he was once a disciple of my Shang Huoming and accept him into the 100 Herbs Gate first. We'll see how good his fortune is in the next few years. If he can reach the third layer of qi refining, then accept him as an official disciple. At least I'm worthy of his 3 years of hard work in my Shang Huoming. I'm worthy of my father's painstaking efforts. Hearing this, Zhang Fan looks embarrassed. Sister Rui, you also know that our 100 Herbs Gate has many disciples and the rules are extremely strict. At Xiao Hua's age, with such a low cultivation, he would have already been crippled and expelled from Medicine Gnome Peak. Then, he looked at Xiao Hua and said with a smile, However, Xiao Hua does have some knowledge of medicinal plants. When he came to my 100 Herbs Gate, he didn't forget to ask for some seeds to study for himself. That's something I admire very much. Moreover, since Sister Rui has spoken up to this point, I have to listen to Sister Rui for once. Let's take him into our 100 Herbs Gate as an apprentice to plant herbs. A boy who grows herbs in the 100 Herbs Gate. When Xiao Hua heard this, he couldn't help but sneer inwardly. The entire mountain was filled with disciples of the 100 Herbs sect. If he, a second-layer aura refining cultivator, mingled among them, wouldn't his fate be to be bullied? Furthermore, his low cultivation level was not a problem of aptitude. If he had stayed in the 100 Herbs Gate, how could he have stood out one day? Even if he didn't die, he wouldn't reach the third layer of aura refining. Xiao Xinrui, of course, thought more than Xiao Hua. She said timidly, Xiao Hua's aptitude is not good. His cultivation level can improve, and in the end, he may not be able to plant herbs. Brother Fan, can you give Xiao Hua a disciple title? Absolutely not, Sister Rui. It's not that I don't want to listen to you, but the iron rule of our 100 Herbs Gate is that only disciples in the third layer of aura refining can be accepted into the gate. Shang Huoming can't accept him, and our 100 Herbs Gate can't accept him either. Moreover, to be honest with Sister Rui, our 100 Herbs Gate also has requirements in terms of age. Xiao Hua, I'm afraid he's already broken the rules. So if Xiao Hua stays in the 100 Herbs Gate, and in the future, if he can't reach the third layer of aura refining, what if he's kicked out of the 100 Herbs Gate one day? Will his cultivation be crippled? Xiao Xinrui said after thinking for a moment. Sister Rui, you don't have to worry about this. What you said is true, but I'm in charge of the 100 Herbs Gate in the future. As long as I'm here, I can guarantee that this kind of thing won't happen. Zhang Fan patted his chest and said, I can't make the decision for Xiao Hua. This is all I can do. Thank you, Brother Fan. Xiao Xinrui looked back at Xiao Hua and said, You heard this kind of powerful relationship. If you stay here, you'll have the protection of the 100 Herbs Gate, and your life won't be in danger. In the future, young Master Jiang has already promised you. But if you leave now, I'll make the decision for my father and kick you out of Shang Huoming. In the future, you'll no longer be his disciple. You're not a disciple anyway. You're just a boy who plants herbs. Your cultivation. Forget it. You just broken through to the second layer of aura refining. For the sake of our past relationship, I won't abolish your cultivation. As for whether you go or stay, you can decide for yourself. Xiao Xinrui sighed and turned to look at her father's coffin, ignoring Xiao Hua. Although Xiao Hua had already made up his mind, he still pretended to think. After a long time, he cupped his hands and said, Thank you, senior sister, wrong. Whether you stay or leave, I'm no longer your senior sister. Xiao Xinrui looked back and shook her head with a wry smile. Yes, thank you for your kindness, Fairy Xiao. Junior thought for a long time. This 100 Herbs Gate is a place of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Junior's aptitude is very poor. Here, I'm afraid I'll never be able to make a name for myself. Moreover, Junior has always wanted to go out and find my origin. If I stay here, I'm afraid I won't have this opportunity again, so… I forgot that you still have this knot in your heart. Forget it, I was meddlesome. Xiao Xianrui nodded slightly. Maybe you're a disciple of some famous sect. If you make any mistakes here and someone finds you, we won't be able to explain it. No matter what my origin is, Junior will remember these 3 years in Yellow Flower Ridge. Thank you, Fairy Xiao and Sect Leader Xiao, for taking me in. Xiao Hua bowed again. Well, in that case, Xiao Hua, you take care of yourself. Xiao Xianrui's face gradually became cold. After thinking for a moment, she took off the storage bag from her waist and handed it to Xiao Hua. I have nothing to give you. Take the storage bag and some yellow talismans. Without these, I'm afraid you won't be able to go far out of Yellow Flower Ridge. Xiao Hua was just about to reach out and take it, but his eyes saw Jiang Fan's smiling face. He immediately withdrew his hand and said, "Thank you, Fairy Xiao, for your generous gift. You don't have to give me this storage bag. Just give me a few yellow talismans to protect myself." Hearing Xiao Hua's rejection, Xiao Xianrui's eyes suddenly lit up with regret. She clapped her hands and took out a stack of yellow talismans. Then, after a little hesitation, she took out several jade bottles and handed them to Jiang Fan. "Brother Fan, I'll have to trouble you to give these yellow talismans and some Wu Chang pills to Xiao Hua." "Well, okay." Jiang Fan, who was beside Xiao Xianrui, reached out and took them. He immediately scanned the yellow talismans and jade bottles several times with his divine sense before handing them to Xiao Hua. Although Xiao Hua didn't have divine sense, he could still perceive divine sense. He sneered in his heart. Xiao Hua took the yellow talisman and put it in his arms. Just as he was about to leave, he saw Xiao Xianrui's hand turn over and take out a colorful object from the storage bag. It was the peacock fantasy that Xiao Xianrui had bought in the market before. Xiao Hua and Jiang Fan didn't know what she was going to do, so they just watched quietly. Xiao Xianrui stared at it for a long time, then raised her eyes and said, "Xiao Hua, the yellow talismans just now can be regarded as my reward for your 3 years of hard work. The Wu Cang pills are for you to heal yourself in case you encounter any danger in the future. The peacock illusion is not a magic tool. I remember that you and second senior brother liked it very much. I will give it to you on behalf of second senior brother and wish you a happy birthday." After listening to Xiao Xianrui's words, Xiao Hua suddenly realized that today was his 3rd year in Shanghuaming. Because he didn't know his own birthday, Xiao Yuehong took the day he met Xiao Hua and brought him to Yellow Flower Ridge as Xiao Hua's birthday. Moreover, Xiao Hua also knew that today was also Xiao Xianrui's birthday. At that time, Xiao Yuehong was rushing back to celebrate Xiao Xianrui's birthday, so he met Xiao Hua on the way. This gift is a bit too much. Xiao Xianrui, this junior is afraid that this junior can't afford it. Xiao Hua's heart was desolate. This peacock illusion was originally Xiao Yuehong's birthday gift to Xiao Xianrui. He didn't want to take away Xiao Yuehong's good intentions from Xiao Xianrui. It's not that expensive. That day, I just liked it, so I fought with Brother Fan. If we didn't fight, this thing wouldn't be worth a few pills. Don't you think so, Brother Fan? And that's right. At that time, I was also curious, so I made Sister Rui unhappy. Jiang Fan certainly knew the value of this peacock illusion, so he said without thinking, "Yes, it's also because of this peacock illusion that I met Brother Fan. Now that I'm with Brother Fan, this thing is not that important." Xiao Xianrui's face was a little red. She handed the peacock illusion to Jiang Fan and said, "Give it to him." This time, Jiang Fan took the peacock illusion and didn't even use his divine sense. He passed it to Xiao Hua. When he was in East City, he didn't know how many times he used his divine sense to check this thing. There was absolutely nothing strange about it. Xiao Hua sighed and took it with his hands. He cupped his hands and thanked Xiao Xianrui. "Thank you, Xiao Xianrui, for your generous gift. Well, Xiao Hua, you have nothing to do with this place. Go down the mountain Xiao Xinrui turned to Jiang Fan and said, "Brother Fan, I'm not feeling well. Can you accompany me to send Xiao Hua out?" He, of course. I dare not disobey Sister Rui's orders. Jiang Fan smiled and nodded. Xiao Xinrui's face was a little red. Xiao Hua looked at the two of them deeply and took the lead to leave the secret room. Outside the secret room, the disciple who brought Xiao Hua here was still waiting outside. When he saw Xiao Hua and others come out, he cupped his hands and saluted Jiang Fan. "Go, inform the disciples to open the array. I will send Xiao Hua down the mountain. In addition, inform the elders of this matter." "Forget it. There's no need to say anything. He doesn't know that Shang Huoming has a disciple who hasn't entered the sect. Expelling a disciple who hasn't entered the sect isn't something to brag about." Chapter 1283. When a disciple heard Jiang Fan's order, he was obviously surprised, but then he quickly bowed and said, "This disciple will go and send a message." After saying that, he couldn't help but glance at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua lowered his head and didn't look up, but his slightly moving eyes took in everything. "Let's go." Jiang Fan came to Xiao Xinrui's side and very naturally held her sleeve. He smiled and said, "You're not feeling well. Come with me." "Thank you, Brother Fan." Xiao Xinrui's face was still slightly red, but that red was very obvious on her pale and thin face, just like the sunset glow. Poignant. Xiao Hua sighed in his heart for no reason. His mind was full of the voices and smiles of Xiao Yuehong, Gong Mingwei, and Zhang Qingxiao, the three faces intertwined and gradually blurred. Jiang Fan flew in front of Xiao Hua with Xiao Xinrui, but Xiao Hua didn't dare to overtake him. He just held his body and flew bit by bit, just like a second-level Qi refining disciple. Jiang Fan seemed to be testing him, or maybe it was unintentional. He flew very fast and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and watched for a while, then snorted from his nose. Jiang Fan was at the peak of the 12th level of Qi refining, but his escape light was not much faster than Xiao Hua's. If Xiao Hua wanted to catch up, it wouldn't take much effort. However, from the conversation just now, Xiao Hua could see that although Xiao Xinrui had feelings for Jiang Fan and wanted to rely on the 100 Herbs Gate, she also wanted to protect him. She didn't tell Jiang Fan about his affairs in detail. In Jiang Fan's eyes, he should be the image of a useless person. If he wanted to safely get out of Yellow Flower Ridge, he had to endure it again and again. Fortunately, Yellow Flower Ridge belonged to someone. How could Xiao Hua not know the way out? Xiao Hua flew slowly along the countless routes he had taken before, and he looked like he was doing his best. However, right at this moment, a sudden change occurred. A screen of light suddenly appeared in the sky, and it instantly enveloped Xiao Hua within it. As the light barrier fell down, it immediately emitted an intense and resplendent brilliance. It rapidly absorbed the surrounding spiritual energy, and in the blink of an eye, numerous blade-like objects appeared within the light barrier. These objects were actually formed from the spiritual energy of the world, and these blade-like objects constantly rotated, just like a spinning windmill. Windblade. When Xiao Hua saw this, his eyes unconsciously shrunk. He had heard Zhang Qingxiao talk about this windblade before. It was a great enemy of Qi condensation cultivators. Xiao Hua saw countless rotating wind blades above the light barrier. They were like incomparably sharp steel blades. The moment Xiao Hua recognized them, they all left the light barrier and shot towards Xiao Hua from all directions, drawing countless strange trajectories in the air. Xiao Hua was greatly shocked when he saw this. He only wore an ordinary Taoist robe and didn't possess any defensive ability. There was a stack of yellow talismans in his bosom, but he reckoned that they were all low-level goods that would absolutely collapse upon contact if used to resist the wind blades produced by this grand formation. This is what's going on. At the same time, Xiao Hua was terrified, but at the same time, he immediately started to think he didn't quite understand. Could it be that they want to silence me? Impossible? Xiao Hua immediately dispelled this idea. because Xiao Xianrui had already predicted this situation. First, she specifically ordered him to be sent out of Yellow Flower Ridge. If Jiang Fan wanted to kill him, he wouldn't do it here. After leaving Yellow Flower Ridge, there would be plenty of opportunities. Xiao Hua suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He immediately woke up. This guy is really testing my depth. It's because I haven't appeared for a month that they became suspicious. But since Xiao Xianrui didn't ask, they also can't say anything. I'm just a little disciple at the second level of qi condensation. Is it worth it to do this? Thus, after a brief moment of shock, Xiaohua immediately took out a stack of yellow talismans from his bosom in a flurry, and then frantically searched for defensive yellow talismans. That expression was simply extremely embarrassing. Sure enough, just as Xiaohua thought, the yellow talismans in his bosom were extremely low level. Just as the defensive Golden Bell talisman was about to be used, the wind blades flew in front of him. With just 2 or 3 wind blades, the light protecting Xiaohua's body was scattered. "Help!" Xiaohua shouted himself hoarse. His legs were trembling. If it weren't for the wind blades below him, he would have already fallen from the sky. Seeing that the wind blades were about to pierce Xiaohua's skin, Xiaohua was still looking for yellow talismans in a flurry, but the corner of his eyes kept slanting to the side. With a ding sound, a familiar voice sounded. "Oh, it's Junior Brother Xiao?" Xiaohua pretended to be panicked and looked up. In midair, a ray of sunlight shone down, and a gap about the height of a person was opened. The disciple who had just sent a message in front of him stretched half of his body out and shouted, "Quickly come up!" Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent and immediately flew out of the gap. Looking at Xiaohua's pale face, that disciple cupped his hands and said, "Junior Brother Xiao, my apologies. This Yellow Flower Ridge's great formation had just been set up. This one still had some carelessness. Please forgive me." Xiaohua nodded with lingering fear and said, I don't dare. This one also thought it was the same as before and didn't pay attention at all. Alas, even if you paid attention, I'm afraid you can't avoid it. That disciple nodded in satisfaction and said with a smile, "Junior Brother Xiao, don't be afraid." Embarrassed. Previously, your Shang Huaming's great formation. Alas, it really couldn't withstand a single blow. My 100 Herbs Gate had no choice but to set up more great formations. Senior's wrong. Xiaohua also shook his head. This one has already been expelled from Shang Huaming. I'm no longer his disciple. Whatever Senior says has nothing to do with this one. Oh, I forgot. The disciple woke up and said, "Let's go. I will lead the way. You follow carefully." When Xiaohua followed that disciple out, Xiao Xianrui was standing outside chatting with Jiang Fan. Xiaohua had just appeared in the great formation when Xiao Xianrui saw him. The trace of anxiety in her eyes disappeared. She frowned and said coldly, "Xiaohua, why did you come so late? Alas, your cultivation. In the future, you'll have to practice a lot. You're not even familiar with flying talismans." Xiaohua's face turned red and he said embarrassedly, "This junior knows. This junior will definitely practice hard in the future." Alas, what's the use of practicing hard? You'll be a rogue cultivator once you leave Yellow Flower Ridge. What future can you have? Xiao Xianrui looked at Jiang Fan and said, "I was just chatting with Brother Fan. I heard that the Huanhua sect is recruiting disciples again. If you have the heart to practice, you might as well go and take a look." Huanhua sect? Xiaohua was stunned. He had never heard of this name. The Huanhua sect is a big sect in the country of Xi. It's different from my 100 Herbs sect. They don't stick to one pattern when they recruit disciples. They don't only look at your foundation and aptitude. If you have the opportunity, even if you don't have the talent for cultivation, you can still be accepted into the sect, Jiang Fan said with a smile. However, because of this, the Huanhua sect has a bad reputation for teaching everyone regardless of background. I was just talking with Sister Rue. This place is quite suitable for you. Teaching everyone regardless of background? Does it mean that there are all kinds of disciples? Xiaohua's eyes lit up and he asked curiously. Yes, that's right. The reason why they are called big sects is because of this. Xiao, Xianrui nodded. Although your aptitude is extremely poor, I think that even a loose sect like the Huanhua sect may not be able to accept you. But, after all, this is still an opportunity. Go take a look. Yes, Junior understands. Xiaohua bowed. Xiao Xianrui, please point out the direction. Xiao Xianrui looked deeply at Xiaohua and pointed in the direction of the Huanhua sect. She waved her hand and said, "Go." From now on, in the country of Xi, in the Xiaoyu continent, there will be no more Shang Huaming's name. You are also a rogue cultivator. Xiaohua felt a burst of misery in his heart. He nodded silently and once again bowed deeply to Xiao Xianrui. After cupping his hands to Jiang Fan and the others, he turned around and flew in the direction of the Huanhua sect. His speed was still very slow, so slow that Jiang Fan could catch up with him if he used his magic power. After flying for a while, Xiaohua suddenly looked back. In the distance, Xiao Xianrui was still standing there. Although he didn't know whether she was looking at him or not, Xiaohua's heart felt warm. She must be worried about him. Of course, maybe she was worried about others. Knowing Xiao Xianrui's thoughts, Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry. He flew at the speed of the second layer of qi, refining for a while. He felt that the divine sense that had just swept over him had disappeared. This time, his expression changed. He used his magic power and used all his strength to fly in another direction. After flying for a while, he immediately lowered his altitude and flew back in the direction of the Yellow Flower Ridge. It took him more than an hour to fly out of the Yellow Flower Ridge. It took him the time to drink a cup of tea to circle around the ridge. It only took him the time to eat a meal to return to the other direction of the Yellow Flower Ridge. The difference in speed was absolutely huge. The Yellow Flower Ridge was still covered in white fog, just like before. But Xiaohua knew that the Yellow Flower Ridge was absolutely different from before. Perhaps the legends in the world were still circulating, and the protagonist of the Yellow Flower Ridge had changed to someone else. At this time, it was really noon. The hot sun hung above his head. Xiaohua squinted his eyes and stared at the Yellow Flower Ridge not far away for a long time. Then, he landed and searched all over the mountain. Xiaohua wasn't familiar with the surroundings of the Yellow Flower Ridge, but Zhang Qingxiao was very familiar with it. She had been noisy in Xiaohua's ears all day long. Xiaohua naturally knew that there were some more hidden caves in the mountains outside the Yellow Flower Ridge. When Xiaohua really found a cave and entered it, he used a stone to block the entrance of the cave. He couldn't help but think of his second senior brother, and his boiling hot tears flowed down his cheeks. Usually, they didn't feel any affection for each other. Sometimes, Zhang Qingxiao would bully him from time to time. Every time, Gong Mingwei would stand up and uphold justice for him. These things he had never thought about them before, and he didn't think much of it. But now, hiding in the cave that Zhang Qingxiao had once spoken of, those scenes of the past came one after another, endlessly gushing out. It was as if his rolling tears had no end. Chapter 1284. After letting the tears flow freely for a while, Xiaohua stretched out his hand and wiped them away. Xiao Xianrui, as a woman, could endure for his safety, so why couldn't he hide the sorrow in the bottom of his heart? It was dark inside the cave. Xiaohua sat cross-legged with his eyes closed, thinking quietly. Yes, from the moment he learned of Xiao Yuehong's death, until he met Xiao Xianrui, until he left Yellow Flower Ridge, he didn't ask about the cause of Xiao Yuehong's death, nor did he ask who the murderer was. If it wasn't the 100 Herbs sect, then it must be the 10,000 Poisons sect. These two sects definitely have something to do with it. Xiaohua mused. This Bai Chao man is even more suspicious. Zhang Min did not meet with danger early or late, but when Xiao Xianrui went to the Bai Chao man, Gong Mingwei and Zhang Qingxiao went to deliver her. He met with danger? This must be a trap set by the 100 Herbs sect. Yes, it must be. They first used the banner of an alliance, and then they tried to unite by marriage. They made 2 preparations. That day, sect leader didn't agree to their marriage, so they made the first move and killed me, Shang Huoming. Then they entered Yellow Flower Ridge with the identity of an alliance and controlled senior sister. Even if others had some complaints, it was justified and no one could do anything about it. Of course, the 10,000 Poison sect is also suspicious, but if the 10,000 Poison sect killed sect leader and 2 senior brothers that day, they should have occupied Yellow Flower Ridge immediately. They definitely wouldn't have waited for my senior sister to come back from Medicine Farmer Peak and be occupied by the 100 Herbs sect, right? What about Little White? What happened to Little White? That day, it was undergoing its lightning tribulation. Spirit beasts that can undergo lightning tribulation are all at the Foundation establishment stage. This is what second senior brother said. It can definitely help sect master. Xiao Hua thought of Little White, who is undergoing its lightning tribulation. I don't know the strength of the 10,000 Poison sect, but sect leader said that the 100 Herbs sect has several elders in the Foundation establishment stage. It seems that Little White was either killed by the elders of the 100 Herbs sect or driven away by them. Xiao Hua was more and more certain that the 100 Herbs sect was the culprit who killed Xiao Yuehong, Gong Mingwei, and Zhang Qingxiao. Even Jiang Fan's gentle smile was seen by him as hiding evil intentions. You want to test yours Truly's cultivation? Do you think yours truly is that stupid? Xiao Hua thought angrily. Poor senior Marshal's sister. In order to save her life, she can only feel wronged. I hope this young Master Jiang will treat senior Marshal's sister a little better. If he treats senior sister a little better, I might consider not taking his life in the future. If he makes senior sister feel wronged in the slightest, I'll cut him into 7 or 8 pieces first. Yes. Also, although senior sister want me to go to the Huanhua sect, in reality, she doesn't want me to go to the Huanhua sect. This is a smokescreen. But where can I go now? 100 Herbs Gate will definitely chase after me. If they can't catch up to me, they'll probably guess that I'm somewhere around Yellow Flower Ridge. I'll wait until it's dark before I leave. This time, I'll definitely fly far away. I can't let 100 Herbs Gate sense anything. Where are we going? Xiao Hua was at a loss. Ever since he woke up, he had been staying in Yellow Flower Ridge for the past 3 years. Apart from the last time he went to the Medicine Farmer Peak, he had never gone out. Regarding this country of Shi, what Dawn Rain continent, it was all pitch black. The overseas celestial clan? Maybe they can find my origin. Can I get a ship to go out to sea? Xiao Hua still pondered. If I can get a trace of memory from tracing light, I'm almost certain that if I can break tracing light, I'll be able to find out my origin. But this thing, who knows how to break it? I'm afraid it's too far to put all my hope on tracing light. Maybe I won't have an answer, even if I die of old age. It's better to cultivate while searching Dawn Rain continent and see if I can dig out memories from tracing light. Just as Xiao Hua was pondering 100 Herbs Gate. Although they weren't the culprits Xiao Hua had identified, but they were doing what Xiao Hua had expected. Early on, Xiao Xinrui stood outside the great array of Yellow Flower Ridge. She waited until Xiao Hua's back could no longer be seen, but she still stood there. Let's go, Sister Rui. Xiao Hua has already gone far. He'll definitely be lucky if he goes to Huanhua sect and will be accepted into the sect. You don't have to worry. After all, he has to walk his own path. As a senior sister, you've done your best. Alas, Brother Fan, you must know the pain in my heart. This Shang Huoming is gone just like that. I feel terrible. Although Xiao Hua isn't my disciple. Once he leaves, my heart is also empty. Xiao Xinrui didn't avoid these things and told Jiang Fan the truth. And I understand, Jiang Fan said with a smile. Nostalgia is human nature. Cultivators like us can't be free from vulgarity. Then I'll stay with you for a while. I hope that when you turn around and leave, you can face our beautiful future with a new mood. Thank you, Brother Fan, I understand. Xiao Xinrui nodded slightly and turned her head to look at the sky where Xiao Hua left. In fact, when she saw Xiao Hua flying at the speed of the second level of the Qi refining realm, she was already relieved. She knew that before Xiao Hua broke through to the second level of the Qi refining realm, his flying speed had already surpassed hers. Now that he had reached the second level of the Qi refining realm, although she didn't pay attention to how fast he was flying, it was definitely much faster than what she saw just now. Xiao Xinrui's mouth unconsciously curved slightly, revealing a smile that she hadn't seen for a long time. She laughed in her heart and said, "This junior brother is not much worse than second senior brother." She stood there and waited for Jiang Fan to urge her again. Only then did Xiao Xinrui follow him into the great array of yellow flower ridge. When Jiang Fan turned around, he winked at the disciple standing next to him. The disciple nodded slightly. When both of them entered the great array, the disciple sent out a messaging charm. A dozen disciples of the 6th or 7th level of the Qi refining realm came out of the great array. They whispered in the disciple's ear and then chased after Xiao Hua. It wasn't until late at night that these disciples came back with tired faces. Looking at their depressed faces, it seemed that they didn't find anything. At this time, Jiang Fan was standing in the hall of Shang Huoming's former residence, pacing back and forth. From time to time, he would look up at the sky. Faintly, he muttered, "Junior brother Xing, can't you be a little more ruthless? You're making me so embarrassed." Jiang Fan scanned with his divine sense and knew that the disciples who were searching for Xiao Hua had returned. He quickly walked forward a few steps, but then his face changed color. At this time, outside the great array of yellow flower ridge, inside the cave, Xiao Hua had already made up his mind. "It doesn't matter where I go. The most important thing is to improve my strength. As long as my cultivation reaches the gold core realm, no. As long as I reach the late stage of the foundation establishment realm, I will be able to avenge the sect master. However, if I want to improve my cultivation, the first thing I have to do is to find spiritual plants and refine medicinal pills. Although the method of taking medicinal pills to improve my cultivation has its drawbacks, making my Dao foundation unstable, I don't have any other good methods. If there were any method to steadily improve my cultivation, I wouldn't drink poison to quench my thirst like this. The second thing I have to do is to find a cultivation method. Right now, I'm in the second layer of the aura refining realm, and I still have Shang Huoming's corresponding cultivation method to cultivate. Once I break through to the third layer of the aura refining realm, I'll be in a predicament where I have no cultivation method to use. In fact, if possible, it's best to find a cultivation method that can help me advance from the first layer to the 12th layer of the aura refining realm once and for all. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's eyes lit up. He stroked his ear and took out the summoning talisman that Kai Zhuoxia had given him from the space behind his head. He muttered, "100 Peak? An individual cultivator whose cultivation has reached the gold core realm?" Sect leader thought that I could always cultivate Shang Huoming's cultivation method until I reach the gold core realm. Unfortunately, that cultivation method has already fallen into Jiang Jiantong's hands. In the past, I naturally had to listen to sect leaders' orders. I didn't need to go to 100 Peak and didn't need to covet other people's cultivation methods. But now, I've already become an individual cultivator. For the sake of Elder 100 Zhang's gold core cultivation method, I have no choice but to go to 100 Peak. Finished thinking, Xiao Hua stood up from the ground, pushed aside the stones blocking the entrance of the cave, and came out of the cave. Borrowing the weak moonlight, he knelt down in front of Yellow Flower Ridge and kowtowed 9 times. He silently muttered a few words in his heart, stuck a flying talisman on his body, and flew up. The direction he was going was precisely where Huanhua sect was located. Huh, what's this? Not long after Xiao Hua flew up, he happened to see an emerald green brilliance flashing under the mountain peak. That brilliance was extremely weak, only flashing for a moment. If Xiao Hua's 5 senses weren't sharp, he definitely wouldn't have been able to see it. At this time, Xiao Hua was already poor, so how could he let go of something that might be useful? When he landed and saw the thing on the ground, he couldn't help but frown. This thing was none other than the deity statue with a human body and a snake tail that Xiao Hua had seen in Shang Hua Ming's inheritance palace. This statue was leaning obliquely between the mountain rocks and messy grass. If it wasn't for the water-like moonlight, Xiao Hua definitely wouldn't have seen it in his hurry. Why is this deity statue here? Could have been thrown out by 100 Herbs Gate? Xiao Hua lifted the statue and looked left and right. After confirming it, he suddenly realized what Gong Mingwei had said in the inheritance palace. Only sect leader and senior sister know the restrictions of the inheritance palace. I guess senior sister compromised and opened the restrictions of the inheritance palace. After 100 Herbs Gates Jiang Fan obtained Shang Hua Ming's cultivation method, the inheritance palace would naturally be used for other purposes. And this statue was enshrined by Shang Hua Ming. 100 Herbs Gate probably has something they enshrine themselves. But Jiang Fan could have just destroyed this statue. At worst, he could have just thrown it in the depths of Yellow Flower Ridge. Why would it come here? Xiao Hua scratched his head. His previous guess was basically correct, but he wasn't Jiang Fan. He didn't know that Jiang Fan originally wanted to destroy this statue, but he didn't know what the statue was made of, so Jiang Fan couldn't destroy it no matter what. But if he threw it in Yellow Flower Ridge, and if Xiao Xinrui saw it, it would be hard to say. Therefore, he told his disciples to throw it far away. There were always lazy people. The disciple who threw the statue was not familiar with this place. After flying for a while, he was scared, so he threw it away and went back to report. Xiao Hua was also coincidental. He flew past here, so of course he could pick it up. Xiao Hua looked around again, but didn't see anything else. He exerted force in his hand, and with a thought, the statue suddenly disappeared. It was taken into the space of his mind. Chapter 1285. Inside Yellow Flower Ridge, on top of Mincy Peak, Jiang Fan scanned with his divine sense and knew that his disciple had returned empty-handed. After the disciple reported back, he said coldly, Xiao Hua is just a boy who has just entered the second layer of qi refining. His flying speed is so slow. You a dozen sixth-layer qi refining disciples actually spent an afternoon and several hours and still couldn't catch him? This disciple is stupid. This disciple and the others had estimated his flying speed and moved forward to search for him. Later on, when we saw that something was wrong, we spread out and searched the area within 100 miles. However, we didn't find any trace of him. Are you sure you've searched all the places? Jiang Fan asked coldly. Yes, young master. He went for less than 2 hours, at most a few 100 miles. Our speed is much faster than his. There's no reason we can't find him. The disciple was very puzzled. No reason? We just can't find him now. Jiang Fan snorted coldly. He flies slowly, and his direction is fixed. Why can't we find him? Where could he have gone? Young master, this guy is only in the second layer of qi refining. His cultivation is pitifully low. What's the use of looking for him? If Xiao Xinzi finds out, how can you explain it to her? Nonsense. I was afraid she would be unhappy, so I didn't take him down in front of her. Listening to Jiang Fan's tone, he really treated Xiao Xinrui very well and didn't want her to be unhappy. But how was Shang Huoming killed? Our 100 Herbs Gate knows nothing. At that time, only Xiao Xinrui and Xiao Hua were at Yellow Flower Ridge. Since Xiao Xinrui has been killed, we can only ask Xiao Hua about it. Xiao Xinzi didn't ask because she knew she didn't have the ability to take revenge. But we can't. Since we have occupied Yellow Flower Ridge, we must know why Shang Huoming was killed. We can't repeat the same mistake. Xiao Hua said that he was sent to the depths of Yellow Flower Ridge to pick herbs. That does make some sense. But I've always wanted to ask in my heart. I understand now. Xiao Hua looks very simple and honest, but he's actually so shrewd. Have you searched the surroundings of Yellow Flower Ridge? Jiang Fan suddenly realized. No, I only searched in the direction of Huanhua sect. I also searched hundreds of miles away, but I didn't search around Yellow Flower Ridge. The disciple suddenly thought of something. Young sect master, you mean? Xiao Hua flew very slowly. He must have been afraid that we would catch up to him. So he turned back halfway and hid near Yellow Flower Ridge. Jiang Fan sneered. Let's go. He must still be somewhere around here. Yes, disciple will leave now. The disciple cupped his hands and left. At this time, Xiao Hua had already put away the god statue and was about to fly up. Suddenly, he thought, Jiang Fan threw away the god statue in Shang Hua Ming's inheritance palace. Of course, he wasn't afraid of being seen by senior sister. Since this is the case, then senior sister must be unable to enter the inheritance palace. Then, wouldn't senior sister have lost her value? Senior sister's life is in danger? For a moment, Xiao Hua stood in the air, not knowing what to do. After a while, he let out a long sigh. What a pity, what a pity. I have the heart, but I'm powerless. Even if senior marshal sister follows me out of Yellow Flower Ridge, where else can we go? It would be better to let senior sister stay in Hunter Herb's Gate. She might even be able to keep her life. Forget it, let's go, let's go. As he spoke, he urged his magic power and flew rapidly in the direction of Huanhua sect. His speed was several times faster than it was at noon. Just as Xiao Hua flew away for the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the disciples of 100 Herb's Gate arrived and searched desperately. But how could they find traces of Xiao Hua? Even after that, Jiang Fan sent a lot of people to search a larger area. But the direction they were looking for wasn't the direction of Huanhua sect. Not to mention how fast they were flying. Even if they followed Xiao Hua's previous worst-case scenario, even if their young sect master Jiang Fan and that foundation establishment stage elder went out to search together, he was afraid that they wouldn't be able to find anything. Although Xiao Hua urged his magic power with all his might and raised his flying speed to the fastest, he flew forward for nearly 4 hours. At this time, the sky was already slightly bright. Along the way, he flew over a continuous range of mountains. Occasionally, he would see a sparse village on the plains or beside a river. Xiao Hua only looked at them, not daring to stop. At this time, the flying talisman on his body was gradually losing its effect. Xiao Hua had no choice but to stop. After looking around, his figure landed and flashed to the side of a mountain stream. Panting slightly, Xiao Hua's nervous mood gradually calmed down. He calculated that he had just flown for 4 hours. Although he wasn't sure exactly how far he had flown, his speed should be several times faster than the second layer of the aura refining stage. Whether it was time or distance, he definitely far exceeded 100 Herb's Gate's estimation. Even the disciples who were chasing him earlier might not have chased him this far. Therefore, Xiao Hua sat cross-legged, very peacefully regulating his breathing and recovering his magic power. Time flowed like water. When Xiao Hua opened his eyes again, the sun was already high in the sky. The mountain stream was empty, and birds were singing. This kind of unknown sound was everywhere, giving off a feeling of paradise outside the world. Xiao Hua closed his eyes again, relaxing his mind. It was as if he had grown another pair of eyes, reflecting everything around him into his heart. The quiet and peaceful atmosphere also made his slightly tired heart feel extremely tranquil. Alas, after a long time, Xiao Hua let out a long sigh. What's the point of being a person? What's the point of only cultivating? Take school head Xiao, for example. He's lazy, doesn't like trouble, and doesn't want to offend anyone. Unexpectedly, he was also targeted by 100 Herb's Gate, and in a moment of carelessness, his sect was exterminated. What's more, Little White was already a demonic beast undergoing tribulation. With great difficulty, it cultivated from a snake to the foundation building stage. How difficult was that? Unfortunately, when it succeeded, it became a small fish that got caught in the crossfire. I didn't hear Senior Marshall's sister mention Little White's corpse. Presumably, long before she returned to Yellow Flower Ridge, 100 Herb's Gate had already taken her back to Medicine Farmer Peak. Since cultivation is so cruel, it's really not as good as a mortal building a house by this stream. When he's thirsty, he'll drink morning dew. When he's hungry, he'll catch fish in the stream. He'll live a carefree life. Thinking up to this point, Xiao Hua let out a burst of hoarse laughter. He said self-deprecatingly, "Even if it's this carefree life, how long can it last? Not to mention that life is short, several decades will pass in the blink of an eye. Even if I hide from the world here, how can it be a true paradise? Even a great formation like Yellow Flower Ridge was breached, and this mountain wilderness is even more defenseless. If any cultivator finds you displeasing to the eye, a yellow talisman will be enough to take your life. How can you still talk about living a carefree life? Survival of the fittest, survival of the fittest. Only by cultivating extraordinary magical abilities can one have the freedom to not be controlled by others. Only then can one soar freely in this world." Thinking up to this point, Xiao Hua couldn't help but feel his blood boil. His entire mind opened up, and an incomparable ambition was born. It was as if he wanted to trample this world under his feet. It's good to think clearly, but I can't think too far. Biting off more than I can chew will only make me fall even more miserably. After a moment, Xiao Hua gradually calmed down. The corners of his mouth revealed a slight smile. "I'll slowly raise my cultivation. Only when I have the strength will I have the qualifications to think about more things." Immediately, Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out the snake-shaped ring from the space. At this time, the ring was different from before. At the very beginning, the ring in Xiao Hua's space only had a snake body. The snake body didn't have a snake head at the front, nor did it have a snake tail at the back. There were only a few vague claws. At this time, the snake body's back had already been mended. Only 2 claws could be seen growing out of the abdomen. Each of the claws had 5 toes, and they clawed down from the air. The mended snake tail was also different from an ordinary snake tail. The tail was extremely similar to a butterfly's wings. The shape of the entire ring was exactly the same as when Xiao Hua saw Little White transform into a python dragon to undergo tribulation. Even if Xiao Hua had never seen a dragon before, he already understood that this was a dragon-shaped ring. It was a ring that lacked a dragon head. Of course, this wasn't the most important thing. What made Xiao Hua frown and think hard the most was that when he was unconscious on the peak of Cherishing Flower Peak a few days ago, this dragon-shaped ring passed some incomplete cultivation method into his mind. And this incomplete cultivation method was the so-called dragon transformation art. At the same time, he also knew that this dragon-shaped ring was called Dragon Jade. It's very strange. This dragon transformation art looks extremely simple, but it's completely different from the Death Flower Dark mantra that I've comprehended before. It's as if it's simply not used for cultivation. Or perhaps it's used to refine the body? Xiao Hua's only knowledge of cultivation came from Zhang Qingxiao's nagging. But even if it's for refining the body, this cultivation method, I'm also unable to make sense of it. I don't know how to start. Could it be because the cultivation method is incomplete? Maybe when I find this Dragon Jade's dragon head and complete this dragon transformation art, I'll be able to cultivate it. But that's also not right. If this dragon transformation art was given to me by Little White, then why can it cultivate into a dragon? This Dragon Jade is only the tail, and it's even less than half of mine now. Xiao Hua scratched his head a bit. He held the Dragon Jade with both hands, his fingers stroking the fine dragon scales on the Dragon Jade's body as he thought carefully. Suddenly, his 2 hands touched the Dragon Jade's meridians. They jumped slightly, as if it was a kind of pleasant surprise, a kind of pleasure. This what's going on here? Xiao Hua's heart stirred, and he tried again. Sure enough, the meridians moved slightly again, as if they were not happy at all. When Xiao Hua tried to send his magic power into the Dragon Jade again, the meridians did not have any reaction. Suddenly, Xiao Hua remembered the change in his meridians when Little White was going through the tribulation. That lightning tribulation was clearly Little White's, so why are my meridians so scared? That lightning tribulation was clearly aimed at Little White, so why did it hit me instead? Could it be that my meridians are somewhat special? That's right, sect leader, didn't he say before? He felt that my meridians are different from normal meridians, as if they have vitality and vitality. It can even be said that they're alive. Living meridians, really inconceivable. Could it be that my cultivation can't be raised normally because of these meridians? Could it be that I have to cultivate my meridians first before my cultivation can be raised normally? Xiao Hua followed his own thoughts and Xiao Yuehong's words and continued to think without restraint. Suddenly, an inconceivable idea, one that he had never thought of before, appeared in Xiao Hua's mind. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.